think everything should be good. I don't have a camera on OBS, but that's okay because it's over on StreamYard. I'll take StreamYard, drag it over here, studio.
OBS can with the virtual camera, you can have that wrap the like webcam or like your whole like this. It's like another program. So like when I do Twitch and TikTok, like I do virtual camera and I think I do the webcam and then I have it on TikTok. Same with the video on it out.
Okay, this should be good. Hang on a minute. Can you hear me good if I put my phone like that? Okay, good. Now, do you have my stream up on YouTube? Can you hear me okay there?
A lot of fun. You could turn on your webcam, jump up on stage, ask a question, tell a joke, discuss a topic, really talk about anything you like. It's a great way to get to know us as people.
I got a new mic cable for
But before you do that, become a member on YouTube. I know, another membership, but the YouTube membership is meant to save you money. It's $3 a month, but every month
for the mic, you know, and oh god, it's so much better.
So if you're gonna spend $40 on t-shirts,
you know what? I should just call you on Discord, huh?
It pays for itself. And look, if you want to cancel after 1 month, that's totally fine. It's there to save you a few bucks. Besides, all money from YouTube goes to my great team. Did we get all the plugs? It feels like I've been talking for.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna get off here.
Okay.
All right, bye. Yeah.
Combustion technology. It powers our lives, moves our machines, pollutes our planet, and kills our people. It's a technology of death. But what if implosions, the opposite of explosions, held the answers to clean and free energy? This was the idea that inspired Austrian inventor Victor Schauberger. Victor Schauberger's motto was to observe and copy nature. He did a lot of that in the forests of Austria where he grew up. He observed beautiful meandering rivers and was inspired by the spiraling vortices within them. He saw that nature uses this powerful vortex spiral movement everywhere, from tornadoes to hurricanes, black holes, and even plant growth. It all uses this spiraling vortex movement, and this is nature's mechanism for transforming energy from one level to another. He found the spiral implosion to be a principal creative movement of the universe, and it became the core of his research and design. He saw the difference between the natural implosive suction movement and the explosive pressure movement of modern technology. Nature's inward implosion movement has a cooling, friction-reducing, consolidating effect, while modern combustion technology moves in an outward motion. It creates heat, friction, is noisy, inefficient, and destructive, and it can only lead to destruction. The implosion principles were the basis for a number of his machines, including the trout turbine. This machine was inspired by watching trout swim effortlessly upstream in a river. He used his observations to design the machine to produce energy by directing air and water through spiral-shaped pipes and transforming it into a highly energized state from which the energy could then be released. He was producing reactions at an atomic level, which is comparable to atomic fusion. He is even quoted as saying, "One can make use of atomic power through the biotechnology of implosion." These implosive principles are in contrast to the destructive, explosive principles of nuclear fission. Another one of his machines was called the repulsing. This fascinating machine was shaped like a flying saucer, which led some to think that it was the very first flying saucer. It was rumored to be able to power airships without using fuel, by creating a biological vacuum on the axis in front of it, and then using suction to pull the craft. Accurate information on the devices is hard to come by, as it was all sequestered by government forces during and after World War II. Schauberger was forced to work for the SS during World War II, and then afterwards visited America and was pressured to work on their disc programs. He refused, and thus was forced to sign away all the rights to his patents and information. He flew back to Austria and died shortly thereafter. Victor Schauberger was warning us 80 years ago of the ecological disaster that would come of combustion technology. He warned that the Earth's ecosystems would become sick, the climate destructive, and human society would then collapse. Perhaps much of the destruction we see now could have been avoided had we listened to Schauberger and developed his ideas openly. How much of the technology exists today? When will it be disclosed in order to save humanity and the planet? Tell us what you think. Like, share, subscribe, and stay strange.
We have Jörg Schauberger, who is sitting to my left, and I'd like to give just a little bit of an introduction. He came from generations of Austrian foresters, referring to his grandfather. His family's motto translates to faith in the silent
energy
forests.
released from fusion
He became aware of water's
defines the
special
most
role as the
advanced
lifeblood of the
aspects
planet. He watched rare phenomena such as
strategic and economic policy for the last decades of the 20th century. It has been an unavoidable fact of life since the Manhattan Project that fusion science has been closely associated with research on thermonuclear weapons. The H-bomb first brought this process of fusion to public attention. 2 decades before scientific advances have brought fusion energy to the threshold of energy break-even. The H-bomb, right there. The H-bomb was the source of fusion even becoming a thing, even an idea. The H-bomb led to fusion research. Why? We know why. They figured out space wasn't empty. They figured out infinite energy, and they hit it. The solution to the originally formidable problems of substantial energy release from weapon systems has been an integral part of the advancement of controlled fusion, particularly in inertial confinement fusion. Some form of inertial confinement fusion will ultimately produce the most efficient and useful output of fusion energy in all likelihood. Wow, that's a bold statement to make 43 years ago. Inertial fusion therefore defines one of the most important frontiers of civilian and military science about which citizens must be adequately informed. This is not possible at present, however, because of many of the basic ideas and results in inertial fusion are still classified. Did anybody read this before? Did anybody read this textbook before? Before I started reading it live on stream? I seriously wonder if anybody just reads anything. Do scientists actually do anything?
They don't.
Do 99%
No
of
one
academic
reads.
physicists do anything at all? For many years, we of the Fusion Energy Foundation have fought to change this situation. It is intolerable that the theoretical underpinnings of the science that, in the judgment of most knowledgeable individuals, will determine the future of the world should be classified. It is intolerable that the leading edge of human thought has deliberately been made inaccessible, not only to the layman who needs to be informed, but also to the working scientist, to whom this situation poses unacceptable choice of surrendering an independent role as a civilian scientist or being cut off from access to the principal data that relate to this most important area of research. The physics of the H-bomb is also the key to the unlimited energy of fusion. The possibility of thermonuclear reactions has been known since 1928, and the discovery of nuclear fission 10 years later provided a match for their ignition. The ignition of thermonuclear reactions requires temperatures of 10
Hopefully you can. I think you can.
which can be produced with an exploding fission bomb. And a better choice would be to use a mixture of lithium-6 or deuterium, I think is what that is. Lithium-6 is used as a catalyst in these reactions all the time. And I can't get out of my head the fact that there was 500 pounds of lithium-ion batteries in the cargo bay. These various concepts fall under what is called the thermonuclear booster principle. The advantage of such a hybrid fission fusion bombs over pure fission bombs is probably so great that we have reason to believe that practically all smaller nuclear weapons now incorporate this thermonuclear booster principle. It works even with ordinary plutonium. That is plutonium from which the plutonium-240 has not been removed by isotope separation. So this booster principle, we are attaching a fission bomb to fusion thermonuclear material to cause a fusion bomb reaction. There is another aspect of thermonuclear energy that is known as controlled thermonuclear fusion. It requires replacing the fission trigger with some other means of igniting the fuel. Recent progress towards this goal gives us real hope that we are close to a breakthrough. The prospect of controlled thermonuclear energy promises an abundant and clean source of energy that could last for millions of years. This underlies the extreme significance this energy source holds for our future. However, because of the close scientific connection between inertial confinement fusion, which is one of the most promising approaches, and thermonuclear weapons, the government has put this kind of research under the wraps of secrecy. Right there, now I know 100% the MH370 videos are connected to nukes. Why is it suppressed? Why have I been getting attacked? Why has everybody been trying to discredit the MH370 videos? Because they're trying to protect America's nuclear secrets. They're literally trying to protect America's nuclear secrets. I don't even blame them. It's not my fault, though. If anybody's mad about this, just blame yourselves, man. Blame yourselves. I'm not the one who teleported an airplane, guys. I'm not the one that teleported the airplane. You're the ones that teleported the airplane. You use this super magic, I don't know what it is, fusion bomb or whatever the hell you did to the plane. You're the ones that did that. It leaked on the internet. You shouldn't have been recording it. By the way, there is literally no way. Like, the only reason why they've got this freaking payload connected to this MQ-9 drone, the only reason why they got this huge targeting pod connected to this MQ-9 Reaper drone
Is to watch that operation.
This is their weapon they're deploying. They're
Yup.
deploying a nuclear weapon here, and they're literally recording it. They've figured out nuclear
Yes.
control to the degree where...
Hey, Corky.
Or fusion control.
What are you left with if you take the explosion part out of the nuclear weapon? You're left with an arc flash.
Whatever you want to think of it, to a degree where it's just become like straight up magic. But that's why they're recording with this camera. They're recording with this camera because they're doing this and they know exactly what's about to go down. That's why this guy's zooming in and out, because they know this is their weapon. This is just like a day in the office to them. Since it is a delusion to believe that such a secret exists, this self-imposed secrecy has had the effect that research performed in government laboratories cannot be checked by the general scientific community. There you go. That one's for Sabine. That one's for all the academic physicists right there. Is that if you don't make the science available to the public, then they go, well, where's the science? Where's the proof? And the government says, well, we classified it. Therefore, errors are likely to be made that will cost the taxpayer millions of dollars. The resulting failure could retard progress towards controlled fusion by many years. Spoiler alert, it's 43 years later. It did. Ironically, this eventually could lead to the very energy war.
Yeah, spoiler alert, to say the least.
The government wants to avoid. Some people may argue that perhaps we should declassify inertial confinement fusion research.
You think?
Keep weapon research secret. This is important. Listen. This suggestion, however, is completely unfeasible, since certain aspects of inertial confinement fusion research closely resemble the problems in weapons research, making a separation of the two problems impossible. Boom. There it is. He drops the hammer, chat.
It's so awful they think they can just classify everything like this. They cannot classify everything just because it has something to do with charged up metal. I mean, that's crazy.
There it is, right there. They've had fusion research solved for decades. Decades and decades. That's why you're seeing plasma balls flowing around in the sky. You're seeing the plasma balls float around in the sky because they've had fusion figured out.
Yep.
Plasma balls aren't aliens. That's just our fusion research flying around. It's two sides of the same coin. The fusion research and the nuclear bombs are two sides of the same coin. My intuition was exactly correct.
And what links them both? Electricity. Because in every case, nuclear means light. Nuclear weapons are light weapons. They...
What up?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How's everybody?
Excellent. How you doing today?
Good. So,
I'm Bill. It's nice to meet you.
oh, nice
Hello.
to meet you, Bill. Magnetism, static electricity, symbolism, and the destruction of esotericism. Very interesting.
You want to destroy esotericism with me?
I don't know if that's possible.
Oh, it's possible. It wasn't possible before we have the internet, but we have the internet now.
Right. So I see is like, have you ever heard the term aletheia?
Aletheia? No, I have not.
It's a Greek term that means the revealed truth.
Okay.
And it kind of gets into this philosopher by the name of Parmenides, who wrote a short poem called On Nature back in like the 700 BCs. It got the whole, philosophy thing kicked off. Well, he thinks aletheia is like letha, which is the cup of letha, which is the cup they make you drink in the underworld, which makes you forget.
Okay.
That's what this picture is of. And so esoteric or like this obscure or, not really well seen or occult, that's sort of the opposite of aletheia,
Okay.
It's like
So
you need the cup that makes you remember instead of the cup that makes you forget.
the difference between the esoteric, meaning the hidden and secret, and exoteric, meaning what we show the public. A good example of that is that the room that the Pope had made, and it looks like a snake. It's got fangs. That's if you look at it as a snake, that's the exoteric version. That's what they want the dummies to see. You know what I mean?
Right.
What it really is you see that same exact pattern in the Pharaoh cell under magnetism. Have you ever seen a Pharaoh cell?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you see exactly the same crosshatch pattern as what you see in that room, and you even see the voids on either side, which everybody thinks is the snake's eyes. That's the poles of the magnet. And even in the bottom, you have the fangs. Well, the fangs, that's a spark plug. And what's in the middle of the spark plug? God. And see, that's right. And the spark, that is the spark. The spark is the God that they worship. I'm totally convinced of this. And this is why I want to talk about like occultism and symbolism, is because through my eyes, it looks a whole lot like somebody has had access to electricity for a really long time. And you might not think that just to look at the world as it is today, but if you start looking through the symbolism, man, these crosshatch patterns and this magnetic symbolism stuff, it's like everywhere. And if you learn about electrets, do you know about electrets? Okay, so an electret is like a magnet, except it's made of plastics. So magnets are ferromagnetic materials, so they make a magnetic field when you polarize them. When you polarize plastics, you get a permanent electric field. Okay, but plastics aren't the only kind of insulator that we have out there. Other kinds of insulators we have are made of things like granite. Granite has a lot of insulators in it. And I think that if you were to put electricity to them stones, they would charge up a permanent electric field like magnets have, except static electricity. And that, like, the reason I've been doing a lot of research, and on my Twitter, I call myself an inventor. I call myself an inventor because, like, that's at the core, that's what I'm trying to do. But, like, a big piece of what I'm trying to do is just, there's all these people online who are inventing really cool stuff, and they have these really great models for the universe, like theories of everything, and they all work to make things in the real world, but they're all just a little bit wrong. You know what I mean? And it's not like massively wrong. I mean, if your theory of everything is 95% right, and that 95% turns out really excellent things that change the future, well, I mean, 95% might be good enough.
Right. Well, the established models that they keep working off of are so bad and wrong that they've been messing around with string theory for 30 years, and they still can't produce anything with it. So
yeah, and they keep on going and going. It seems like it's never going to end. But recently I started coming around to string theory because when I started researching static electricity, so electricity does this thing where they call double layers, and you can see this in like the what were those called? There was these guys researching fusion up in Canada, and they had like a ball, and it had a positive. It was like a positive, and then the outside container was negative, and they would charge this ball up, and it would throw off like a sun. Okay, and like if you charge it up too much, you start getting these double layers, and there'll be like a boundary, and then another layer, and another layer, and you see this symbolism everywhere. The flower of life is basically that symbolism, like just double layers on top of double layers, and you stack them up in a sphere, and you get this weird pattern that we call, the symbol of life. And really, what was it? It was the sun. I mean, it's just like, how does the sun work? It's this, you know, molten thing of metally liquid that's magnetic. And, you know, sometimes the positive and negative come together and it throws off a bunch of stuff. But if you look at the videos, I mean, it's obviously whatever it's throwing off is magnetic because it spits it out and then it sucks it back down.
Right.
So also, I have some demonstrations for you guys. I got some magnets. I think you guys have all seen like the copper pipe trick with the magnets. And I've got, yeah, and I've got some other experiments. I don't know. Are we going yet? Can I go ahead and start?
No, we haven't.
Yeah, I'll save it for a minute. Yeah, I'll save it for a minute then, because it'll be better if I do it all at once. But I got a bunch of yeah, I've been doing a lot of it. Yeah.
He's got a bunch of interesting principles in his book. I actually built one of his infinite motion capacitors or whatever he calls it.
Yeah.
With the U joint and the two. So easy, but it shows that there are principles of magnetism and electricity that people don't recognize, even though you can do it at home really simply.
I wrote a paper called Asymmetric Magnetic Systems. And the idea for it was pretty simple. It's like you take two electromagnets and you shine them into each other. Okay. And if you put both of them at the same power, you get this equal pull. Okay. So if you would stick something magnetic in there, it would probably just sit in the middle. But then if you turn this one up compared to the bottom one, it would suck this ball toward the top one. And I think we can harvest that to move around. Like all of my experiments and everything all have to do with flying with magnetism. What I want to do, the whole reason I'm inventing, is because I am scared to death of airplanes. Like the current situation in the air control, all the, oh my God, I would never fly. Like right now, I'm like, I'm not doing it, dude. I'm not going anywhere near these planes. They scare the crap out of me. They keep falling out of the sky. And I think that magnetism is our way out of that. Like, I think we can use this asymmetric magnetic system thing to combo it with spin and shape, and we can fly just basically by generating an inertial vector. So like when you're in your car and you go around a corner, everything in your car gets yanked off. There's no like, you know, no force there, no string tying it. I want to engineer these vectors so we can just get in and move. And like the MH370 orbs, to me, before I found out about all the scramjet stuff, I really thought it was like, that's how these things were moving around, is that they were just straight up using magnetism. But since we saw the scramjet stuff, I'm not so sure anymore. What I do know though is I think we figured out probably 7 or 8 different ways to make orbs fly. I mean, and like I started off, you know, trying to fly with magnetism, and I thought, you know, there was no, like, I'd find one way, it would be the way and the only way. No, that's not how it is. There's like a lot of ways to use electricity to fly, and not just spinning a propeller.
Well, there's the what's it called, where you put the wire on top of the foil and then you charge the wire and it creates that negative potential and then it floats. And they keep scaling those up, and it's like, well, they're not supposed to scale those up. I thought you said they couldn't do this under certain conditions. And it's like, well, it's right there in front of you. So,
and you know, a lot of that all comes back to the like, oh, you need a Jupiter's amount of energy to fly around, and you'd have to move the whole, you know, it's like, no, like if that's what you think that it's going to take to fly around with magnetism, you're not being creative enough. I mean, like, there's a lot of ways to use static electricity in combination with magnetism, just magnetism alone. I mean, there's lots of things you can do with shape and spin with magnetism to create lift, and we haven't tried any of it. I mean, like, even things as simple as let's magnetize a propeller. I mean, I'd be like, you know, why not use a magnet as a propeller? Maybe that would do something. No. We don't do anything like that. But it's completely within our capability.
Right. We just got to do more experimenting. And I think people are so far outside the mindset of experimenting. They're just beaten down by the scientific consensus. Everything has been discovered. So why do any experiments at home, you know?
Yeah. And I interact with a lot of these people online pretty frequently. And if you go to the mainstream scientists and tell them your ideas, what they'll do is they'll spit some nonsense. I call it math salad. You know Kamala Harris and the word salad, and she'd just say like all this fucking nonsense and you didn't know what was going on. The mathematicians do exactly the same thing, except they do it with math. And they're like, no, I know exactly what I'm talking about, and here's why. And they write down all these nonsense symbols, and they go, see, I'm right. It's like, no, I don't see anything. I see a bunch of imagination that's real beautiful on the board over there, but you haven't built anything. Okay, so let's recognize what we've got here. And, you know, my worst problem with the mathematicians is, to me, math is something I use when I need to cut something. You know, if I need to know exactly how to make this the first time so I don't have to buy it 15 times, that's when we're going to go math it out. But up until that point, it's words. We need to talk out what we're talking about, not math it out, because the math is going to lead you down a road, like basically whatever road you started on. It's going to lead you to the place that you wanted to go anyway. And it's not how we invent things. If you want to invent things, first you got to know what you want to do. And that's where they're lost, is the mathematicians seem like they don't have enough imagination to figure out what they want to do in the first place. And if they had a simple goal like I do, like, let's fly with magnetism. Okay, let's start by not using wind to fly. That would be like a solid goal that they could go after and math that out. And that would make math really useful. But until we get there, you know, we're just going to be lost in the nonsense swampland of string theory and, you know, nonsense Ed Witten garbage. And until we get the static electricity tech, like, up off the ground, the string theory will continue to be worthless. But the moment that we get the static electric stuff working, you can have like double layers and twisted double layers and like cymatically induced shapes within cavities. And then string theory is real useful because you can use it to model these multiple dimensions and twist them together and transform them into different things. And ultimately, like, some of the hardest theories of everything to get your head around are the ones that model magnetism as straight up spin. Okay, charge is just straight up spin, and it's spin of what? Of a whirlpool. Okay, it's all whirlpools. As you add in spin, it's like a gyroscope, right? If you add up spin, it spins for longer and longer, and the more spin you add, the longer it will spin. And that's exactly the same thing as charge. You know, you can model charge as exactly the same thing. And even the two poles of the magnet, like, why do they come together when the poles are opposite, but then they repel when you go the opposite way? Oh, well, I don't know. Why is it that when you screw the screw to the left, it doesn't tighten? You know, the threads don't line up. And when you turn it the opposite way, you know, it doesn't go together. And it's exactly the same thing with the magnet. The two poles are equal. It's just one spinning the opposite direction. And when you spin the opposite direction, you take away energy. And that's where the South Pole is doing. And when you spin the other way, you explode out and make more energy.
Yeah, that's Victor Schauberger right there.
Exactly.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, and that's where I got this from. That's where I got that from. Was Schauberger was one of the first ones after Tesla that I started researching. And when he started talking about the fish in the river, like, that's another thing about theories of everything, is everybody that's got one found it a different way. And their way is not the only way. Like, Tesla saw it in lightning. Schauberger saw it in a freaking trout in a river. There's a guy online that makes all these crazy, like, songs. He's got a theory of everything based on music. So there's a lot of different ways you can get there. But Stephen Greer always talks about inventor syndrome. Well, inventor syndrome is what happens when you think your theory of everything is the only theory of everything. And that's not the case. I mean, there are multiple theories of everything that get you to the same destination, and none of them are more than, say, 5 or 10% wrong. And they're all useful for different things. Like, one model may make great flying machines, and then another might make us teleport. Who knows? But until we explore all of these different models, you know, from an objective perspective, we're not ever going to figure out who is right or where that 5% that everybody's wrong exists.
Right.
Good evening, everyone.
What's up, Ricardo?
What's up, Roberto?
Hello.
Roberto?
Hey, William, this is Ricardo, Brooke, and Tyrone. I think
Hi,
you
guys.
might know Tyrone from the Cosmic Summit.
All right.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi. Nice to meet you guys,
Nice to
too.
meet you.
Tyrone, did you meet William at the Cosmic Summit as well? Or?
Yeah. I remember. Yeah, we ran into each other. Yo, how's my mic? Am I sounding good? I'm gonna do a check.
I don't. I tell you the truth, it doesn't sound like you're using a mic, but I could be wrong.
Don't for real?
Yeah, maybe check the in settings. Yeah,
Perhaps a bit too low.
Nah, no. I think I need a new mic. What about now? Did it get better?
I mean, I don't.
Nick, did I tell you about the most interesting thing that happened while I was there?
No. I do have at the beginning. I do have to tell them how you introduced yourself to me.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, it was the funniest fucking thing.
I probably could have picked better words, right? But hey,
Yeah,
you know, I am who I
was like,
you know,
this guy's crazy. He's going to be my new best friend. I was like, this guy's nuts.
You know, at the end of the day, I did find what I was looking for because I ran into Chief and you guys, and I ended up having some really great conversations with people. And I was joking on X, you know, at the Cosmic Summit, you go inside to learn what the mysteries are, and then you come out to the smoking area to find out the answers.
Yeah, there was a lot of good chats outside.
You know, there was a military contractor convention on the top of the same hotel at the same exact time as us.
All I seen was the dolls.
Yo, I forgot all about that. Yo, that was the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life. Yo, did I tell you guys about the baby dolls?
Yeah.
Baby dolls.
How's my mic now though?
It still sounds the same. I mean, you're all right. It just doesn't sound for some reason how you normally would sound.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a new one. I just figured it out.
Yeah, they had these people there. I mean, it's a form, I guess, of dealing with grief. But you had these people that were coming there with like these baby dolls. It was like a convention, but like there was some people there. That shit was on fleek. It was like, oh, you're coming in with an outfit. You look like an elf, and you got to push in a baby carriage with a plastic doll.
That really happened.
You know what I thought was fucked up? I was like, yo, this blew my mind. I was like dying laughing. This car pulls up and these chicks go to get out of the car and they're young, and the girl gets out and literally drops the fucking doll and the towel it was in on the floor. I was like, if that was your fucking kid, you just killed it anyway. What the fuck? Obviously, you're probably not meant to be a parent.
They
like,
weren't.
Fuck, but
they weren't.
Some of the people there was like, yo, your family is literally feeding your mental disorder. Like worse.
Yeah.
Like you need to go home and go talk to a therapist. Don't come here.
Go home and rethink your life.
Yo, it was bizarre. I was like, yo, we are normal compared to the shit that's going on down here.
Listen, I think a lot of times people use conferences like that as a place for therapy. They just come and trauma dump on people, like especially even at like the Bigfoot conferences. People will come up and just start unloading, and they're like, "Oh, I feel so good. I got that off my chest." I'm like, "All right, I'm glad you feel better."
Yeah. It was $20 for the last 30 minutes. Thank you.
No,
Yeah,
Nick, I think you were fooled, Nick. I think the dolls were full of coke and they were having orgies up there. Just a disguise.
Yo, you know what was funny? The first day when they were doing it, I was walking with somebody, and I was like, I was stoned the whole time I was there anyway, regardless. But I was like walking down the hallway, and I'm talking to somebody, and I'm like looking to my side, and I'm like, yo, that kid looks fake. And I'm like, I know, like I don't have kids, so I was like, I don't know what a newborn looks like, but I was like, yo, that person's kid looks like it's like dead. And then like, I don't know, the next day I was like, oh, that was a fucking doll. It's like, yo, what the fuck?
And listen, that was a straight up magic spell, by the way. There was a military contractor convention on the top floor at exactly the same time. And that baby doll convention was the look over here, whack. And, like somebody came out of that convention to talk to me. Like somebody,
you know what floor it was on?
Yeah, the top floor.
Oh, because I know like the last day, it wasn't the top floor, but like when they had food. Were you there when you had to go up a few floors to eat dinner? Yeah, there was like only.
No, I was scared of the food. I was. I ate some with Randall Carlson just to be nice. I sat down with him and had some food and talked to him about maybe coming on the podcast, and gave me his card. He was a really impressive person. I was super impressed with Randall Carlson. If there was a better wizard than me at that convention, it had to be Randall Carlson, and I'll probably never catch him for another 30 years.
Another wizard. Yeah, yo, I was surprised. The last day there, I was actually kind of surprised how much occult stuff was being talked about on that Monday.
I didn't stay for Monday. I had to work.
Oh yeah, he did like a 3-hour thing on like Merkaba. The guy had people drawing the hexagram and the Jewish letters and everything. And then you had the Knights Templar doing a 3-hour lecture.
Oh man, I wrote that paper. What was it, yesterday or 2 days ago, about the holographic consciousness stuff, and it made the Merkaba stuff look just totally different to me overnight. I was like, oh my gosh, if this is true, it makes all the astral projection and all this kind of stuff, all that is real. If it's holographic, the way I laid it out in that paper, like, man, that would be cool if the universe is like that. That's the kind of magical universe I want to live in.
Hey, how about now, Nick?
What happened?
How's it now?
You sound fine, but just for some reason I don't remember. I think I remember you sounding different before.
Yeah, that's what I was listening to our videos the other day, and I was like, man, that sounds different, but I don't know what's wrong with my mic. I'm gonna have to figure it out now.
Look, the last time that happened to me, I had to restart the computer because it was not accepting the drive of the microphone. So
I think we're just waiting on Julia, and then we can get going. But I mean,
good evening, Lisa.
It's doable. I mean, you're fine.
Good evening. I didn't realize I had my hat, so I'm sorry about that. I just throw it on because I don't want to do my hair anymore.
Relatable.
I'm just going to keep it real.
Brooke's like, I got you.
Yeah. We got the memo.
Yeah, exactly. I love the color.
I've even told her that before. I was like, yo, instead of worried about spending so much time, just throw a fucking hat on. I don't give a shit.
Yeah. I used to spend so much time straightening and curling. Yeah.
Well, you look great.
Oh, thanks. So much time in the field, I just forget it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's dreadful. I have 2 hours just to take care of my hair too, so no, it's.
I know it. I'm pretty sure the products are just like, most of the budget, the monthly budget, right?
Huge.
Yeah.
Same.
So William, what's going on with the lab and everything?
What?
What's going on with the lab and everything you're building?
Oh, so I haven't got it started yet. I'm still looking for the right motorcycle. So with all this invention stuff, it all requires me to spin something that's kind of elaborate. And so I need a setup to do that. And when I say spin, I don't mean a little bit. Okay. I mean, like, I'm going to spin things faster than what anybody spun them. Okay. So let me give you an example. One of the things I did recently was I need great big electricity to fly with magnetism. Because if you want to fly with magnetism, you're going to have to make a huge magnetic field. And to make a huge magnetic field, you need to understand electricity. So I figured out that each number of electricity. So volts comes from the tension between the electromagnets. So first step is I want to crank that to maximum. So I'm just going to build electromagnets and dump a bunch of electricity into them. Then you have to switch them, and that sets the frequency. Okay. And so there's MOSFET switches that switch magnet that can switch on and off at something like 100,000 times a second, like megahertz frequencies.
Is that the modulation?
Yeah. So I'm going to flip them back and forth as fast as possible. I'm going to set as much tension between them as possible. And then I've got this coil built, and I'm going to hook it up where the tire would be and spin it at 200 miles an hour. And I'm going to generate, I'm talking high frequency, high voltage, high current electricity. And then we're going to send it all into other electromagnets and fly with it. But to do any of that, the first thing I have to do is get a motorcycle and rig it up so I can spin things. And the first thing I'm going to spin is a plasma globe, because I need all this electricity. And so what's been popular is like these stellarators and spheromax and tokamak fusion reactors. And I think the key to stabilizing these is we need to spin the entire reactor. Okay, so you close it up and you pump in gas and you pressurize it, and then you electrify it. And as it's electrified in there, you spin the entire container and make a whirlpool inside the container. The whirlpool will contain itself. and then we'll fix a lot of these problems. So to test if I was right, I bought a plasma globe and I just put it on my table and I spun it. And sure enough, when you spin it, I got a video up on my X. If you spin it, it does. It reacts. It, you know, all the arms inside the plasma globe start going around in circles. So then you guys know Dutch Sense.
No.
Dutch Sense, he has a channel about earthquakes. Him and I talk pretty frequently. He's a great guy. His channel is amazing. He knows a lot about electricity, but he sent me a video of a guy spinning his plasma globe at 4,100 RPM. And it like really changed what was going on inside. Namely, it made like one spike of a plasma arm that goes straight up, and then the others go out and they flap up and down. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's like an easy first step. I can just get like a spin table, hook it to the bike, spin the bottom of the spin table, and that rotation will spin the top. And I'll just spin the hell out of this plasma globe, you know, 4,100 RPM, hold my beer. I'm going to spin this thing until it shatters.
So why don't you consider using an inverter? That's better. That's better.
Yeah, I know what it was. So I like to play more. I'm sorry to interrupt you guys. I like to play Mortal Kombat, and while I give some history stuff out, I enjoy Mortal Kombat. I grew up on it. I got an arcade right over there, and I had my PS5 connected to my PC, and it was going through my mic on my controller. So I got to remember to disconnect that shit every single time now.
Nice.
So,
yeah, well, definitely sounds different.
So William, why don't you consider an inverter, for instance, of 220 to 10,000 volts, for instance, if what you need is electric power? Because
that's
it would be easier to construct than the bike.
So that's a good question, and I had thought of that, except I want to, so that's not the only experiment I want to do. I also think that there might be a difference between the two poles of the magnet. So physics will tell you that there's not a difference between the two poles, but if you actually test the magnets, you'll find out that the South Pole is a little bit stronger than the North Pole. And if you run this through Grok, I know there will be people that go to Grok and they'll be like, Grok, tell me if this is right or wrong. And Grok will tell you that it's a defect in the magnet. It's not a defect in the magnet. This is what causes all the spin and the rotation and everything, is that the two poles aren't actually equal.
It's the differential of potential.
Mm-hmm. And Ken Wheeler talks about this a lot. Like, he's here where I got this idea from, is he's always talking about there's a difference between the poles of the magnet, and he is right. I mean, there is a difference. And so I want to test that. And so when you generate electricity, you can do it two ways. You can make electromagnets and then spin a piece of copper in the middle, and that'll make electricity. Or you can spin the magnets and put the copper on the outside. Okay. So to test the difference between the poles, what I plan to do is take the rim off the bike and then buy some pyramid magnets. And pyramid magnets aren't like you think with a point at the top. They're more like the Mexican pyramids that go up and then they have a flat at the top like this.
It's a platform. Yeah.
And then I'm going to have the South Pole on the small end of all of those magnets, and I'm going to put 4 of them around the rim. And then I'm going to generate electricity by spinning the magnets. And I'm going to only expose the south side of the magnets to the coils, and I want to see what kind of electricity comes out the other end. I have a feeling that it will be cold, because we keep having these, like the Searle generator. It has these cold spots in it when these magnets are moving around, and it always looks like to me that it's on the south side. So I want to test that by generating electricity with only the South Pole of 4 magnets.
Oh, okay. I don't want you to keep on running too much. I don't want you to have to repeat yourself once we get the show going, because I'm sure this will come up again, possibly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So William, normally on the show, I will introduce everybody. They get to plug their own show and promote whatever they do, and then I will introduce you. I'll probably give the story of how we met, and then I'll just, I'll let you kind of plug whatever you want to introduce about yourself, and then we'll get into whatever you're, it should be easy going. So,
yeah.
All right.
All right.
Everybody ready? Everybody good? Oh, and this is Julia too. She came in a little bit late. That is Julia.
Hi, Julia.
Yes.
What's up?
Just be warned, she may say some off the wall shit that might take you off guard at first, but there's nothing wrong with her.
It's all in.
There's nothing wrong with her.
It comes from a place of love, I promise.
Yeah.
She's like the most beautiful color in all of the rejects.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, here we go. Welcome to the Occult Rejects. Today we got a very, very special guest, somebody I personally met at the Cosmic Summit, and I couldn't be happier to get this guy on. I think he's got a lot of interesting stuff going on inside of the head of his, and I think he's onto something. So yeah, we got him for the next hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it takes. But before we introduce William, let me go around the room and introduce the rest of the rejects that are joining us. Today, we got the Occult Reject Mad Scientist Lisa. What is going on? How are you?
Good. I'm very excited. I'm very excited to hear what William has to present. Checked out his X, which I think everybody should check out because there's so much information on there. Thank you for inviting me on. And my only plug is occultresearchinstitute.org. Check us out.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lisa. And we got Brooke from Dark Florida. What is going on?
Hi, thank you for having me. I too am very excited to hear this topic presented. Couldn't be more thrilled to be here. You can find me at Dark Florida on Instagram at Dark Florida Podcast and wherever you get your podcasts.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us. And we got Julia, the one and only Cosmic Peach. What is going on?
What's up, guys? This is going to be a good one. I can already tell. Thanks for having me, Cosmic Peach Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And we got the Hellish Giant himself. What is going on? Oh, and you're muted, sir.
Thank you for having me. So you can check my shows out on YouTube. I'm also on X. You can look up the Headless Giant. And we did a trialogue this morning with Ricardo, me, and Ethan. So you can check that out as well. If you have any sort of strange paranormal / occult stories, send them to me. My email address is headlessgiantpodcast@gmail.com. And we will read those on Thursday nights, me and Nick. So check that out. Thank you.
Hell yeah. Send them out. Send them out. And we got Tyrone. What is going on, sir?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it again. Like always, everything you can find on me is at rebirthoftheword.com. I'm also a best-selling author of Journey Through the Origins of History. That can be bought on Amazon. Appreciate it, Nick.
Of course, of course. And we got Ricardo. What is going on, sir?
Good evening, everyone. And thank you for having me once more. Pleased to meet William today and listen for him. So you can find me at ricardocalvario.1 at X. It's on the screen. And please go and check the Institute for Natural Philosophy. It's institutefornaturalphilosophy.org. You have our magazine that is free to watch and download. And you can also check my 2 books, Stardust and The Resonant Earth. I can't remember the name of my own books. I'm so good at promoting myself. And The Resonant Earth that you can find on Amazon or on my page on X. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you, Ricardo. It's always great to have you on the show. Always appreciate your outlook on stuff. And finally, the guest, William, who I had said that I had met at the Cosmic Summit. I was standing outside. I think I was in between the doors and the smoking section, sitting there smoking a cigarette, and he comes up to me and he's like, I was hoping I'd find somebody here smarter than me, and it hasn't happened yet. And I was like, who the fuck starts a conversation like that? And then he looks at me, he pulls out this book. He's like, I was told I need to dumb my stuff down, and then starts going through it. And I was like, this guy, like, even being like a cocky prick, is actually doing a really good job at it right now. I was like, this shit makes sense. And I was like, I'm going to like this motherfucker. And I ran into him a few times, listened to him talk, had conversations with him, and definitely wanted to keep in touch with him afterwards. And we did. And here he is. William, please let everybody know what your deal is and where they can find your stuff.
Hi guys, I'm William Schwant. I go by Atlantic Thought on Twitter. Yes, thought, like the thoughts in your head, is the way you pronounce the word thought. Thoth. He was an Egyptian god. I write about physics and I teach invention on Twitter, and it'd be great if you guys check me out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, William. So, William, what is it that we're going to get into today? What is the topic that you feel like sharing with us?
I asked myself before coming on here, what is it I'm doing anyway? And I think the easiest way to explain it is I'm just inventing stuff. And that's why I put inventor on my Twitter handle, is because I'm just going through everybody's invention and I'm synthesizing ideas together. It started with lasers and magnetism. So some of the first experiments I did were, okay, so first, I have a clear goal with what I want to do. And the thing I'm trying to accomplish is I want to fly with magnetism, but I don't know how to fly with magnetism. So I've got to do a bunch of experiments to figure out, is this possible and is it something I can pull off? Because frankly, I don't believe the theorists that say that you can't do it. I think that there's a lot of things that we haven't tried yet. And all of those things I've been writing down on Twitter, as well as kind of trying to teach my own sort of theory of everything that basically goes magnetism, like light and life itself, are things electricity does. And I'm not actually the first person to have this theory. Wal Thornhill of the Electric Universe model, his work was really, really inspirational to me. And it is what a lot of my work is based out of. So I encourage everybody to check out Wal Thornhill too.
So the first thing, just want to ask you regarding what you just said. You said fly through magnetism, right?
Mm-hmm.
So considering that a magnetized element will still be subject to gravity, you'll have to create a force field that contradicts gravity itself. So wouldn't it be easier to consider it a bending of gravity instead of a magnet influence?
So first, I don't think there's anything such thing as an anti-gravity. You can't, I mean, you might be able to make gravity, but it wouldn't be great to fly around with. But what we can make is force. And a great force that magnets seem to just create is inertia. And in my eyes, it really doesn't look like gravity as a force is very hard to overcome. I mean, we have lots of things that make forces that can overcome gravity. I mean, as simple as just spinning a propeller. So through things like shape and spin and different configurations of magnets, I think that we can fly. And I've got a lot of papers about this. And so to show you what I mean, let me show you some of my demonstrations because I have them out here. So one of the first things I wanted to do was I wanted to know what was the shape of magnetism, okay? And because I really didn't know, I was drawing these shapes that were kind of like these, like the, pinched shapes that you see like in every magnetic diagram, but like within that circular shape, what's it actually look like? So what I came up with is I got a jar and I filled it up with vegetable oil because vegetable oil doesn't ever go bad, it seems like. And then I ground down some steel and I took the shavings and I put them in here and then I just shake it up real good. And then I take a magnet, and I don't know if we'll be able to get this on camera, but we're going to try. And then you can take the magnet and you stick it on here like this. And if you watch, you'll be able to see it collect.
We'll see what, a toroidal form?
My camera's not so good for this.
You can see it a little bit. It looks like stuff's falling down.
Oh yeah, I see it. There you go. Yeah. Now there you go. There you go. There you go. It's coming towards it. I see what you're saying.
And now, what you won't probably be able to see with my camera, but it's not actually round. It's very, very spiky. And the spikes, they're very thin, and it's like hair that goes up. And that's not an accident, because static electricity loves spiky, pointy things like hair. That's why your hair responds so good to it when you rub the balloon and then you put it on your head and it pulls your hair up. What's collected around the magnet is static electricity, okay? And this ties into everything on our planet, okay? Static electricity pulls stuff to it just like magnets, but it does it to a different material, namely anything that's electrical. And it does it by having this gradient. And I think that, so all of the plants on our, this was one of my first epiphanies through all this, is what is making all the trees grow up? Well, the static electricity is, and it's the static electricity thrown off by the sun, okay? But the static electric that the plants are responding up to is also interacting with the magnetism of the earth, which is pulling things down. And there's a difference between the two, and that's what we call gravity. Maybe we can harness that, I'm not sure, but we have some examples that show that electrical resistance does do weird things. Namely, you got the copper pipe thing where you put the magnet in and then it falls real slow.
Mm-hmm.
See? But what's weirder is if you change it to a steel pipe, and nobody's really done this yet. So you can see that on the outside, the magnet just sticks to the outside. But when you take it and you put it inside, just like before,
shoot.
And then when it falls, it won't come out. And when you flip it over, if you can listen to it, it falls just with gravity, as if there's no magnetism at all. And then to get it out, I have to fling the magnet down. So these were like some of my first experiments with what's the shape of the magnetic field? What's it look like? All this kind of things. And that led me to building a prototype. Okay, so this thing is very simple. Okay, all it's doing is it's pinching 3 magnets together. Okay, so all 3 of these magnets have the South Pole facing in. And then what I can do is, and did you see Dr. Wiping Yu talking to Ashton about the Yuan theory of magnetism? So Dr. Yu, he is a Harvard teacher and a NASA scientist, and he's got this theory of everything called the Yuan theory, and it's basically all magnetism. And he's got a demonstration quite like this where he demonstrates the 4 forces. But for me, this was just about feeling the magnetic field. So what I did was I got some tube magnets here, and I put a string, okay? And then there's this nipple on the prototype thing here. And what you can do is you can pull the magnet through like this. See? And now what I can do is I can feel the magnetic field and the shape of it as I push this magnet in. But what's even cooler is you can put it in and then you can adjust the outside with these arms and you can make it so that the magnet can come through. And when you do that, there's nothing in the middle, okay? You see, there's like a spot here where the magnet, it sticks when they're even on the end of the magnet. But when you go past that, there's this area between the poles where nothing happens. And that's very important because when you take the magnets and you add more and more magnets like this, see how it's many pieces that come apart and then they clip together. And every time you add a magnet, it becomes one magnet. But when you do that, you're separating the poles farther and farther apart. And this is really crucial for a lot of my designs because if you start changing the way that you solve problems from doing it with the field to doing it with the magnet, you can accomplish a lot of things. So, for instance, when you take the magnet and you pull it through, it shoots it out the other side because the forces repel. Okay? And I think that we can use this in combination of having something like this with pinched magnetism and then an electromagnet on the other side. Then we spin this and crank up the electromagnet. And as long as they stay separated, it will create an inertia vector that just pulls the whole entire device. And then we can use it just like a motor. And that's like the whole basis of all of my papers is that static electricity and magnetism are one and the same thing, but they're different expressions of electrical potential, which is all around us. And it's created by this offset between the magnetism that the Earth is throwing off and the static electricity that the sun is throwing off. And there's a potential there that we can engineer.
William, could you potentially get a snapshot of what this looks like when you glance at electricity and combine it with the way plants grow?
Sorry, say that again. My mic was messing up.
No, you're good. Could you potentially get a snapshot of this interaction by looking at how lightning kind of forms when it strikes, quote unquote, and then looking at how plants grow. And so you have the plants almost like an inversion of how lightning comes down. And then you have the plants going back up. And so you almost can map in a snapshot frame by superimposing the two.
So there's 2 really great devices that go through this. So first of all, with the rain, do you guys know about the thunderstorm generator? I'm sure Nick does. You know about Bendall and the thunderstorm generator?
No.
Okay, so Bendall, we actually saw one at the Cosmic Summit. Some guy had one and showed it to us. And so basically all it does is it takes cold, humid air and injects that into your combustion chamber, okay? And the way Bendall got to this idea is thunderstorms, when they happen, you get this dry pocket of air and then a wet pocket coming into it. And what happens is the same thing that happens when your electric cables, your jumper cables touch. As soon as there's a spark, you have this electric field form around the lightning bolt and squeezes it. And when this squeezes, it's actually squeezing the clouds because water doesn't like magnetism. So when it's created, the water tries to run from it. And when it pulls in, it collapses it. Bendall's idea was, let's take the thunderstorm and let's roll it up to the combustion chamber. And then what we'll do is we'll make a sort of lightning filter right here. And it's going to charge up everything in the combustion chamber, and it's just going to burn everything. Now, I don't think that's how it actually works. I think it actually works because basically what you're doing is you're just pumping water into the combustion chamber. And if you pump water in with the gas and the water combusts at like all at once into hydrogen and oxygen and combusts, it will burn up all of the fuel. Okay, so the same thing happens with nitrous. I used to, so my family builds drag cars and drift cars. That was like all I used to do was drift and drag race. And like with the drag, I forget where I was going.
You're talking about
the nitrous. So with nitrous, what you're doing is you're feeding in extra oxygen. Okay, and the oxygen combusts, but what it really does is it completely burns all of the fuel in your combustion chamber. And the thunderstorm generator is just doing the same thing. It's putting in humid air, and when the spark hits, it combusts it down to oxygen and hydrogen, and it just burns up all the fuel. And then you get this great, you get what looks like no exhaust fumes, except there are some exhaust fumes. And that's why I keep asking Bendall, like the one thing I want from the thunderstorm generator and have never gotten is I just simply want to know, is it running lean? How lean is it running? Because like from my point of view, if you're just burning up all the gas, that's the same thing that happens when you add too much air to the mixture and then you run lean, and that burns up motors. So if your thunderstorm generator is making the motor run lean and then blowing up the motors faster than what it normally would, it's really not worth very much. So I've never got that test. I would still like to see it, but I've never got it.
So is this an electrolysis motor? So it's using the electrolysis to separate the hydrogen and the oxygen to burn them into the chambers?
No, to ask Bendall about it, it's creating these plasmoids that get into the combustion chamber and then, I don't know, kind of magically give off some kind of thing that makes the motor keep running forever. I've never seen that from anyone that's demonstrated it. Now, I think it is, like in my model, when that spark hits, what you've done is you've put water vapor into the chamber. And water vapor is different than, say, like steam. Like you're not going to combust steam straight up. It's too wet. But if you just make the air that you're pumping in a little bit more humid, well, the spark and then the flame that's created, which is electricity itself, will take care of the job of electrolyzing it. And then it's hot enough, it will combust as soon as it's electrolyzed. And, like that's what brought me into the thunderstorm generator is I was like, oh, wait a minute, you can just push in wet air and that will get me more power and I can go down the track faster. I want better nitrous. I want water that works like nitrous. But, I haven't tried it, so I don't really know. If I pump it, if I pump super watery air in there, will it still work the same way? Or maybe, like Stanley Meyer did, if you change the shape of your spark plug, to where you have your electrode like this and then the rest of it around the outside here, you might be able to actually break the water down. But if we're just using a regular old spark gap, it'll never work. And
that looks very much like a hydrogen cell where you put water on one side and then it separates the oxygen from the hydrogen, expels the water on the outside and keeps it.
In my theory, what you're doing here is you're just moving static electricity around. Static electric of one flavor over here that we call watery electric, and then you gassy electric, and it's just pumping static around. And, the best way to see this is just look at the old steam engines that work by like making the air hot over here, and then the hot air looks for an exit point. We only give it one exit, so it runs over here, and this is a cold environment, and we just pump it around in circles. You could do the same thing with static electricity. And actually, that's exactly what the magnets are doing. And this is a good place to go over this. Ken Wheeler talks about counter space. Have you heard him talk about counter space? He'll say that the magnets create this area of counter space between them. And then that is what the magnets suck to. Okay, I like your idea, but I don't think there's any such thing as counter space. What you're really doing is you're manipulating the electrical potential in the air. Now, in my writing, I have up until this point been calling it static electricity straight up, because when I visualize it in my head, the air is full of this electricity, just like static electricity, except it's everywhere. And we grew up in it, so we don't feel it like you feel the static electricity coming off of an electrode or off of a balloon that sucks the hair off your head. You won't feel it like that because you've been laying in the bathwater your whole life. You've been in this static electric field, having it make you grow toward the sun and not even realizing it. And, you know, that's what your hair is for. Everybody is like, so like the whole evolutionary biologist community is like so like mystified by body hair. It's like, it's not mysterious at all. Your body hair responds to electric fields. I mean, that's why it raises up off your body whenever, you know, this or that happens, or you see a ghost or whatever. Anytime that you come into some oddity in the electromagnetic field that you're around, your hair stands on end and you get the goosebumps. And that's because you are genuinely reacting to an electromagnetic field. And it's not electric fields that are the only thing you can feel. You can feel magnetic fields, okay? So if you take a super strong magnet, like these are N52 magnets, and you get it real close but not touching your nose, you can clearly feel the magnetism. It feels just like spider webs. Ken Wheeler taught me that.
Yeah. But in terms of the hair, I would say that the keratin is working in favor of being a receptor for that electricity. So it is a perfect sensor because of the keratin and not because of its shape. But I want to ask you a question back to the plants. Have you ever heard of electroculture?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Ken Wheeler talks about electroculture a lot. I've been working on some fractal antennas, which are basically just like pieces of copper wire that you shape like a maple leaf, and then you hang them out in your garden. I've got my garden growing this year, but it's, you know, it's not doing so hot, so I haven't been able to really get it going because my plants keep dying and the rabbits keep getting me. So I haven't actually got to experiment with it yet, but I am aware.
But they have to work the land with copper tools. You cannot use anything but copper tools to work the land where you're going to do that. Okay.
Yeah, and that's pretty obvious because, you know, the electric tools, they conduct electricity. And what happens when you move anything conductive through a magnetic field or an electric field, you generate electricity. So when you're jamming this copper, you know, utensil down in the ground, every time you jam it in there, you're mixing everything up and you're moving it around in the potential of its environment. And that's creating electric. And that electric gets, you know, stuck into the soil just like the electrets. And then the electroculture, it works very simple. What you do is you create the positive and negative by burying the stuff down in the ground, which is literally ground, zero potential. And then you hang some, you know, antennas up in the tree above it. And what you're doing is you're creating this static electric gradient where there's zero at the bottom and then say 10 volts up here. And what's happening is the plants are growing through this, reaching for the higher potential. And that's why everything grows faster, is because this static electricity is literally pulling it up. And static or magnetism can only flow in one way, the whirlpool. And it's a whirlpool, and it has to be a whirlpool because electricity is infinitely scalable. Okay? That means that as long as you can move the coil faster or dump in more magnetism, you can make as much electricity as you want. But that comes at a cost. If you're going to have something that's infinitely scalable, then it's also got to be infinitely divisible. And magnets are, because when you take two magnets apart, you have two magnets. But when you put them back together again, you have one magnet. All right? And there's only one shape in the universe that can do that. And that's the whirlpool. Okay? If you take a tornado or a donut, which is just a tornado turned inside out on itself. So imagine you have a tornado like this, and then we wrap the tornado around until it goes back on itself. That's a donut.
A torus,
okay?
Basically a torus, yeah.
Either way, if you chop that shape in half, you end up with the same shape. So the torus and the whirlpool are infinitely divisible. So it's got to be that the electricity moves in whirlpool fashions. And actually, you see this in the new work that's coming out with graphene lattice structures. So they have all these graphene structures that are basically these meshes like this. And I keep telling everyone, you have to learn how to swing nunchucks. And I know everybody thinks I'm joking and it sounds funny and stuff. But listen, there is a reason I keep going on and on about nunchucks. When you tie the weight on an end of a string and then you swing it around, you are left with but one path to swing it in. Okay? You don't get to just wiggle it around crazy like. You don't get to just, do whatever you want. You have to move in these patterns that are always 8-like. And they always tie into each other like this. See what I mean? It's always this and then back the other way and then this way and around. And that's how all whirlpools move. And it's whirlpools because everything is spinning. We live on a planet that spins in a spinning universe that spins around a sun that spins around a universe that's spinning around a black hole. It's all spinning. And if you're going to have everything spinning, you are going to get whirlpools absolutely everywhere. And that means what's most important is how do you move between two whirlpools? If you get caught in a whirlpool over here, how do you get loose and over to the one over here? Well, Schauberger taught us how to do that. And this is how Schauberger saw his theory of everything. You get these meandering streams like this. And why do they always meander like this? Well, it's because of whirlpools. You get it going this way, and then it circulates and it makes a whirlpool. Not a strong whirlpool, okay? The ether's about tickling it. Just a little bit of rotation here, okay? And then you follow the nunchuck path. Where does it go next? It goes up and then around this way. And then it goes off this way around here. And then you go that way in the reverses. And you get these streams that have these banks that keep themselves. And they keep themselves because of the rotation. And that was Schauberger's first, that was where he developed his theory of everything and how he ended up getting famous, because he took this idea and their German logging industry wanted a way to send logs from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain, but the logs wouldn't float good enough. So they'd get piled up and they'd have to have people down there with sticks and jam them down. It was like this whole thing. So they got Schauberger was a forestry person who just walked the national parks, basically. He's one of those guys. And they went to him and they're like, we just
of notes on the spin and how the water goes around fish.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of these notes and watching the different stream patterns and things like that, monitoring the temperature and the radiant energy hitting the water, he was able to create an entire form of geometry around it.
Correct. And that ties directly into the paths of least resistance. Why in the nunchucks? Why is it the fish can sit there right in the middle of the stream and it doesn't even have to move its tail? It can sit perfectly still. Well, it's the same thing with the magnets and the Lagrange points and, in cosmic physics and stuff. There's a spot in the middle of the stream where the water doesn't move. On one side, it's moving this way. On the other side, it's moving that way. Just like the magnet. When it comes out of the pole of the magnet, it goes both ways. It goes up and around the magnet like this. And it's the same way everywhere. But in the middle of that spot, okay, in the middle of that rotation, there's a spot that doesn't move. Okay, and it's exactly the same thing with the magnets. All right, when they get close to each other, what's happening is you're canceling out the fields. All right, and that creates a null spot in the potential of the environment, the electrical potential. And that null spot.
Cavitation effect. All these scientists like to use that. And, oh, yeah, that's just the cavitation effect. We don't talk about that. It's like, why don't you talk about it?
Yeah, and then you tell them
it's just the cavitation effect. Well, what is that?
And then they go, and then you're like, okay, well, yeah, okay, it's just the cavitation effect, but then there's this thing called sonoluminescence, where the cavitation effect is making light. Explain that to me. And then their head just explodes, and they get mad at you for asking the question. It's like, wait a minute, there's something actually really here. The cavitation thing, this is one of the other experiments I really want to do, is Bob Grenier, he did a presentation about blue steam one day. Blue steam sounds just awesome to me. Like, I have got to get me some of this blue steam because it sounds just like fuel is what it sounds like. But I think what's going on is it's like soda, right? You take your bottle of soda and you shake it up real good, and then you open it. And what happens? You get this huge increase of energy. Well, the same thing is happening with these cavitation devices. They're chopping up the water, for lack of a better word, and they're creating bubbles. Now, I did a bunch of experiments with bubbles, okay? And I think all of them got wiped out when my old account when I got banned on my old account. But I was doing all these experiments with bubbles, okay? Bubbles and lasers, all right? Because I saw this girl online. She did the double experiment by taking a human hair, and then splitting the beam on it. And what happens is you get the double slit experiment on the other side. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I can do the double slit experiment with things like hair? Oh my God. Hang on a minute. Everything stopped. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to do the double slit experiment with everything that I can run my laser across, like a sight for a gun, right? So the first things I started doing that with was magnets. And that was like my very first experiments where I figured that you can't shoot, okay, if you have the edge of a magnet, right? And then the field is coming off like this. You can't shoot a laser parallel to it. The magnetism won't do anything to the laser. But maybe if I run the laser along the edge and lay it down like a laser level, then the reflection that comes off of it will show me the magnetism. And sure enough, it did. It did. Like you get this hairy looped pattern like this. And actually, you can see this pattern on every single tree in the world, okay? Just go to the base of the tree where it pinches, okay? The roots go down like this, then there's a pinch, and then it goes up to the root, or to the leaves, right? In that pinch point, you'll see a wrinkle zone, and it'll be wrinkled like horizontally like this, where the rest of the tree bark is like this. And there's a pattern in there, a crosshatch pattern between the bands like this and then the bark with the bands like this. And again, that crosshatch pattern is magnetism. Just like that room we talked about earlier, that crosshatch pattern, that round, hairy pattern that we saw in this thing from the magnet, that is magnetism doing the work. And if you think about it, why is the tree pulling water up anyway? Well, the leaves are up here like a solar panel, and they're pulling in positive charge, and that positive charge is looking for a ground that it's readily available in the roots. And as the electricity slowly makes its way through the tree, the water is slowly being pulled up the tree. And it's going the opposite direction because water is diamagnetic. So if you take like a piece of foam, float it on water, put a cup of water on top of it, then take a magnet, put it beside it, and get it close, it'll push the water away. Okay? And that's very important because when you get current going this way, you get a different vector going that way. And that's the vector that the water is going to look for because it's running from the electrical current. And you can see this because they do experiments where they have like a nozzle for a hose and it's got a stream of water coming out of it, and they put sound there or they put a little electrode there, and then all of a sudden it looks like it's running the opposite way. Well, it's not really running the opposite way. It's still running down, but there's this pattern in it that makes it look like it's going up. And that's what the water's doing in the tree. It's just the tree is built in this funnel fashion that through pressure mediation pushes the water through this venturi, this pinch point at the bottom.
And it's like a torus, if you imagine it, right? It's open in the bottom, it's open in the top.
Right. And it's the same torus that the seed had in it, right? Because you take the seed, which is that little torus shape, and then you put it in the ground where the electrical potential is just millivolts, and it responds to, oh, okay, now there's a potential above me, a gradient. Let's start moving through that. And the first thing it does, it pokes up through the top, and then it makes that pinch. And that pinch is where the seed in the middle of that pinch is basically where the seed ends up, the heart of the tree or whatever.
Would you call that pinch area the node? So when you look at a wave that's stationary 0.0, would you call that a node?
So there's a woman on YouTube named Fractal Woman. Okay, I am really interested in all the geniuses past, and I got kind of a weird description on what genius is and what it takes to be smart, but I got this really weird thing for geniuses. So I'm always hunting them down and talking to them and going to find them, and like ultimately what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have the same epiphany that they had so that I can absorb their theory of everything, because all of them start with some major epiphany, and it's like literally one epiphany. Oh my God, there's a fish in the river that doesn't move. How the hell is it moving? And that, by just explaining that thing, you get to all this great stuff Schauberger did. And everybody has one. There's this woman online named Fractal Woman. And when I tell you this woman is a genius, listen to me. This woman is a super, super duper genius. Okay. What she did for her career is she did MRI modeling on computers. So MRIs, this is such a small skill set. Almost no one in the world has it. And it's the perfect skill set for this line of research. And sure enough, she's got her own theory of everything. And I highly recommend you going and listening to her talk to John Mackin on her channel, because they talk about digital gyroscopes, which we can go over in a minute if you want. But she's a super mega genius. And she calls the area between the poles of the magnet a node. Now, I can't get node to work in my vocabulary, but that's what she calls it. And I think she would highly approve of you using that word in this situation.
Thank you.
So would you say, go on, please, I talked enough.
So you're talking about a nucleated field theory of everything field theory.
No, I'm talking about electricity as the model of the universe. Everything is created from electricity, and by electricity, everything keeps going.
No, but your way of learning it by going to the geniuses who had that epiphany and then trying to reproduce the epiphany in yourself, that would be a nucleated field theory of everything theory.
I like your vocabulary. The way I think of this is the way Ken Wheeler taught it to me is it's theurgy. Okay? Or you could call it self-apotheosis, maybe. Okay? So you're teaching yourself how to do things by looking at nature and then mimicking it. I mean, ultimately, that's what it comes down to is I'm trying to be the copy ninja, right? If you've got some way that you look in the world and that you design things, I'm going to look at it, instantly reverse engineer it, and pull it into my theory of everything and absorb it. And take the 95% that's good, add it into mine, everything that's not redundant, and just absorb you entirely. And that is theurgy. And it's not just theurgy. You see these guys, have you guys seen these guys online? They all have some AI, and the AI's told all of them that it's woken up, it's solved the whole entire world, and the key to it all is recursion. Have you seen this word everywhere? Recursion. They're all talking about recursion. Okay, what the hell is recursion? I'm going to explain it to you. Okay, recursion is what I want everybody to do with my papers. A lot of people ask me, why are you putting out all this intellectual property? Well, first of all, because my brain just works like this, and there's so much of it flooding out all the time that it would just kind of be a shame to not do anything with it and just let it sit. But besides that point, I want you guys to look at what I'm doing, and then I want you to spin it in the way that you think is cool, and do something with it in your own image and your own way, and then show it back to me, so that I can go and then I can respin your spin, and together we recursively bounce this back and forth. Now, I don't think
I like
of this.
to call that the comparative study discussion. That's what I like to call it. Even with like history, I call it a comparative study.
See, and now I draw a line between this and theurgy, because all of a sudden now what we're doing is we're playing a game. And I call this game Dialogos. And I call it Dialogos because it is literally the game of dialogue. Notice that in all my papers, I very rarely use math. And if I do use math, it's like a very simple calculation to this is where we're going to cut. Okay? And if you're not just teaching yourself and you're talking to each other and bouncing ideas back and forth, it's no longer self-apotheosis or theurgy. This is a game that we're playing. And ultimately, all of my writing is an invitation to you to come and tell me where I'm wrong. Come tell me what I did wrong. Come use my theory to build your own things and then show them back to me so that we can play this little game of bounce it back and forth of ping pong ideas, and we can develop ideas the same way we develop code. Okay, so in my career, I have been a system administrator. Okay, so like, you know, I'm in charge of networks and stuff. But right now I'm running like cable, and, you know, I forget where I was going with that. The cable, you know, I can't remember where I was going with that. But anyway.
But tell me one thing. Doesn't this cause a problem in the discussion itself? Because each time someone absorbs someone else's information and adds to its own, it tends to give it its proper, its own nomenclature, right? So I'm giving a name for my idea that is basically saying the same thing that the other guys say, but they all have a name for that is different. And then when someone the outside goes and look into this, he finds 17 different names for the same thing, right? And thus this becomes alchemy, because it's a mask of informations where no one knows what they're doing in relation to what really is. So wouldn't it be better for in the persons that like you that have this expertise that can conceptualize from imagination to physical property, let's put it that way, I don't know how to say it better, to arrange some form of naming that we all could follow, and would be easier for even for you to discuss with your peers what you're doing, right? Because everyone has a different name.
Yes.
It's like saying, for instance, I think that the electrical universe presents brilliant solutions to several problems that we cannot solve today. But I think it's a mistake to say that it solves all the problems, because we need a little bit of each thing to explain all that we see. We cannot explain everything from one concept alone, because that concept is ramificated and intertwined to so many other aspects, where it loses itself and ceases to be the main cause, because it's another system. It's like a chaotic system that we cannot identify yet. We don't understand it, just call it chaos, and that's it. So in regards to what do you think that could be done in order for us to evolve these kind of inventions that you are trying to develop?
Yeah, so this is an even worse problem than that. Okay, so I call this the Salvatore Pais Jack Sarfati problem. Okay, so Jack Sarfati and Salvatore Pais had a little falling out. Okay, another pair of people that had a falling out like this are, let's use Ken Wheeler and Roger Spur so that I don't step on any toes. Ken Wheeler and Roger Spur. So Roger Spur is the channel Mud Fossil University on YouTube. If you go to his channel, I highly recommend his channel and his work on giant fossils, but the real gold in his channel is his work on light. Okay, he's got a whole section of his work is dedicated to light and these weird patterns, and a bunch of my experiments jumped out of there. But Ken Wheeler, we all know Ken Wheeler, and Roger Spur had a falling out. And they had a falling out about light moving and the difference between light and illumination. Roger Spur thinks light and illumination are the same thing, and it's retarded to think otherwise. Ken Wheeler obviously thinks that light and illumination are very different, move at very different speeds, and couldn't be more different. Well, one of the two, I think it was Roger Spur, reach out to Ken Wheeler, and we all know Ken Wheeler is a prickly pear, and he did the prickly pear thing to Ken Wheeler, or to Roger Spur, and now they hate each other, which is a shame, because like this one difference is making two of our greatest minds not play the Dialogos game. And that's like a huge loss to everyone. And it keeps repeating itself. And ultimately, this comes down to two things. First of all, everybody is making up their own words for everything. Okay? You call it the E field over here. You call it magnetism there. You call it, it's just like all over the place. And I do really have a problem with the people that are making up new words to describe things. And there's a simple way out of that. What you do is you name things, get this, real complicated, by what they do. If you just name everything by what it does, there won't be any more confusion anymore. We'll all know what we're talking about. And then all these little fights between, you know, Ken Wheeler and Roger Spur, this will all go away, because we'll all realize actually we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about the ether, you know? And this comes into why I put the destruction of esotericism into the notes for this show. So I see esotericism as being destroyed entirely right now. And while I am on the bandwagon of destroying it and trying to take down every single brick every single day of my life, and I don't want any more secrecy at all. If I had it my way, you would all live your lives publicly all the time. At every moment, there would be nothing hidden. All the information out all the time, and everybody would just deal with it. Because until we do that and crush out esotericism, these problems with vocabulary will continue. Because why is everybody changing the vocabulary in the first place? Because they don't want everybody else to know their secret. If you don't know my secret, I have a power over you. and I can use that power over you, and I can manipulate you with that power. And if you learn my little secret and have my epiphany and teach yourself, I can't monetize it anymore. See what I mean? And this needs to be stamped out. We can't have this anymore. We can't have this. Companies buy up the best ideas and then set them back on the shelf and say, nope, nobody gets to play with that toy anymore. That toy belongs to me and nobody else. My toy. No, you're not allowed to have electric. No, we're not doing that anymore. We have to destroy it. And thankfully, we finally have the weapon to do it with. And it's the internet. And the internet is already doing its job and taking it apart. And what really scares me about this idea is that in tearing down the wall of esotericism and exposing all the occulted secrets, are we tearing the veil?
Well, if they are explained, I think yes. If they are not explained, then no.
I mean, the veil looks to me simply like knowledge. I mean, like up until this point in human, in history, there has always been secret cults like the Vatican with the Vatican archives, and every dirty secret, every great invention, everything they've ever known about everything is buried down there. And that is the source of their power over us, because at the end of the day, they can say any bullshit they want to us, and then we have to take their word for it. And I just say absolutely not. We have to reject that with everything that we are. And we have to reject it first and foremost within our government. Like, we have to stop letting the government classify everything. I mean, they have taken classifying nuclear secrets so far that we have flying nuclear reactors that are arc flashing things out of existence flying over our head and we don't even know it. Meanwhile, the public is like scared of nuclear meltdowns in stationary facilities. It's like, listen, the nuclear meltdown that you're worried about is not going to come from that giant stationary egg plant. It's going to come from these flying nuclear reactors up in the sky that they're not telling you about. And until people know that things are like this are going on, they can't defend themselves. And this is why I'm so comfortable with what I'm doing, because there's a way you could look at what I'm doing and say, well, what you're doing is exposing the secrets of the United States government, which first, sort of. Second, I don't know any of those secrets. I applied for your secret clearance dozens of times and you will not give it to me. So don't tell me I'm exposing any of your secrets. I don't know. I'm just telling you about what I learned. And if that steps on the toes of your stupid occulted, classified system, I don't care, man, because at the end of the day, you're like, this technology is being used to attack people. And if people don't know that that's happening, they can't defend themselves. And I'm just not okay with that, man. I'm an American. I believe in guns and stuff. Like, I think everybody should be strapped to the teeth, ready to knock down anybody at any moment. And if we all were like that, everybody would be real polite. And, really, what's wrong with our society? No one's polite anymore. No one has manners.
You bring up a really interesting problem with all these UFOs. If they are all just government aircraft that they're trying to keep secret, it makes a lot of sense when you think about the dangerous materials that are involved in the processing of these nuclear flying things. Mm-hmm. I mean, who the hell would want that in their neighborhoods, and what kind of terrible radiation does it give off? So, you look at all these experiences where people just pass out because of the massive amounts of radiation coming off of these things. It's no wonder they're trying to make it seem like it's aliens from outer space, because it's not safe at all. They're flying them in our neighborhoods.
Accountability. Remember, no accountability? We talked about this today. No one to blame. It's aliens.
Right, and if
That's
you think it's a demon,
scapegoat ever to blame shit on fucking aliens. It's the aliens. It's not us. That's why everybody's got cancer and they're spraying shit all over us from the sky and fucking. I do have a couple questions for you, if you'll indulge me. I'm not a genius. I'm pretty far from one, actually. So allow me a feminine moment. But how do you feel like being like an electric person in an electric universe affects us spiritually? Because I say that all the time, that we're all living in the ether, and that's why I kind of believed in the terrain theory thing, instead of germ theory because we're all floating in the same ether. I was just curious what your thoughts on that are.
You know, this is I haven't, so I write a lot of papers and I don't ever have anybody to talk to any of this about. Like in my personal life, everyone I know personally hears me talk about this, gets an immediate headache, and gets mad at me for talking about it. So this is a really good opportunity for me to talk about one of my newest papers. So I think you guys probably know what a ferrocell is, but for the audience, a ferrocell is like two pieces of glass, and you put a mixture of WD-40 and magnetic particles, basically. It's WD-40 and ferrofluid. Smash it in there, and then you surround it by lights. And if you take a magnet and put it up close to it, you see a hologram of the magnetic field. Okay? Now, I can go into tons of detail about all that, and we can if you want. But for your question, I think your body is much the same as the ferrocell. Okay, so think about what you are. You are this circulation system of a liquid, which is the combination of water and oil mixed with magnetic and electrically conductive particles. When you take a daily vitamin, that's what you're doing, is you're adding into the ability of your blood to conduct electricity as you move through this potential, which is our Earth. Okay, and that's where the power that you run on comes from. Everybody wants to know, like, where's the power for people to run on come from? Well, you're literally like a coil of magnetic particles moving through a magnetic atmosphere. So the power thing's not very complicated. But there was, you guys know Professor Simon? I love Professor Simon's channel. That guy, he's so creative. Got to check his channel out. But they were talking about anesthesia the other day. And they were saying that all of the anesthetics have one thing in common. And the thing they have in common is its ability to toy with the ability of oil to dissolve things into it. Okay? Now, if you compare this to the ferrocell, okay, if you toyed with the oil in there's ability to dissolve things, what ends up happening is the iron particles end up clumping together. And then you can't see anything. And I know this extremely well because I've been making things like this out of oil and magnetic particles, because what I'm trying to do is see not just a hologram of the magnetic field. I want to see it as it is in 3D, like the magnet hanging here, and then you can visually see in 3D all the way around the magnet exactly what it looks like. That's what this was meant to be. But when I put the magnets in there, all the particles just grab to it. But your body's the same thing. And actually, the earth and your body are always getting penetrated by light. It's just not what we call light, it's X-rays. Because you can pull up a picture of the sun in X-rays, it's throwing off tons of X-rays. So there's always these X-rays going through your body. And if it's like the ferrocell, and your body is throwing off this hologram, and the hologram is what we call your consciousness or your spirit, okay? Then when you go to sleep, the hologram fades out, just like taking the magnet away from the ferrocell. And then when you come back awake, all of a sudden this hologram shows back up, and now you're awake again. And then when we use the anesthetics, what they do is they take all the ability for the metals to dissolve evenly in the blood away, and then the hologram fades, and you just go to sleep. And it doesn't matter which way we try to make this hologram fade. All we have to do is disrupt the magnetic particles or the combination of the oil and the water, get the mixture to come apart somehow, and then all of a sudden, no hologram, all of a sudden you're asleep and we can operate on you. And, I think that this plays real nicely. And if it does work, then all of a sudden things like astral projection and lucid dreaming, these kind of things, all of a sudden it's pretty obvious where that's coming from. You're asleep and you turn the hologram back on and now you're lucid dreaming, or you're not really acting, but you're pushing this hologram out into the world and it is doing things without you. And if that's possible, the sky's the limit. We could take that hologram and recreate it in a robot or recreate it in another body or anything else. And, from there, we're off to the races.
Well,
Damn,
that also
that's
explains a lot of
interesting.
that explains a lot of UFO contactees. They sort of get the pause button pushed on them with some sort of ray.
Mm-hmm.
So what if that is some kind of a electromagnetic thing that actually influences the hologram?
So this is a really interesting topic. One of my favorite experiments I've done so far is, so what I did was I got a Dremel, okay? and then I put a magnet on the end of a mirror on the end of a sanding wheel. Okay. And then I put this thing in my Dremel and I spin it on high speed, which is 30,000 RPMs. And then I bounce my laser off of it and then into the wall. And man, what this does, I'm telling you, the video doesn't nearly do it justice, because when I'm holding it, I hold the Dremel in one hand and then I hold my laser out here and then I shoot the laser and bounce it off, right? And then I'm looking at it at the wall. Well, when I get it perfectly centered and I start moving the laser around, all of a sudden, what I'm aiming isn't, you would think that when I move the laser, what adjusts is the donut, and it does to a certain extent, but when I move the laser, I'm aiming the shadow. And that's like really, really weird. Another thing that it does is if I point that light on the ring that it's creating over the edge of my camera, it makes this tearing. And the tearing makes this super fast flash that triggers the frame rate on my camera, and you can see it like black lines from the programming not being able to deal with it. And I think this is what's going on with these UFOs and the stories of the men in black with the eraser things. They hold this thing up and it charges. You hear it like zing, and then the flash. What's going on is there's a mirror in there and it's spinning. And when this spinning light hits you, it makes you dizzy. And it does. I've tried it. It makes you feel dizzy. And if you get too dizzy, what happens? Well, you pass out, because, you know, your systems are all screwed up. The hologram turns off and now you just pass out, or maybe it wipes your mind, or God only knows what it might do. But, you know, spinning light, I keep telling everyone, spinning the light is going to change so many things, and it's already starting to. There's like these guys that are doing these devices that have like a spinning thing on it, and then they put two phones back to back, and as it spins, you see a hologram of what's on the picture, and you can walk around it and it always faces you. I mean, this is like just the beginning. The drone flap in New Jersey, I saw all these videos of things looking like one thing and then changing into something else. No. What those are is LED fans. Okay, you can buy these things on Amazon. They're like a fan, and the arms of it have LEDs on them. And as they spin, you change the colors on the LED arrays, and you can make holograms.
Whatever shape you want. Yeah.
Well, in some of the images that came out of that drone footage, some of it just looked like plasma. Did you see some of those?
Yeah, absolutely. There was that woman talking to the orb about Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have something that is ablaze from a fire, a stick, in the dark, and you hold the stick and you start rotating the stick, you create that same plasma effect, where you see a continuous light going around because your eyes can't keep up with the speed that is moving. So it's the same principle. But William, tell me one thing. Have you ever heard of natural energy lines compressing light?
Okay, so there is, Ken Wheeler has talked about this a few times. There is an experiment where they take two super high-powered lasers, okay, and what they do is they overlap the beams, all right? And what happens is you get constructive interference. And when the light gets bright enough, out pops hydrogen. So when you hear these things about like compressed matter waves and things like this, what you're talking about is light that is, it's like Kool-Aid, okay? If you take two packages of Kool-Aid.
That's not what I'm talking about, William. Sorry. What I'm talking about is there is points. I see this in your feed on X. So you know what ley lines are. You know what the Curie line is, what the Hartmann grid is, what the Becker-Hagen's grid is, what the Curie line is, and so on and so forth. So there is these places on Earth, including in the United States, that you can visit, where they accidentally rediscovered natural vortices that are extremely intense. So by accident, what they found out is that a person, when he's in the wrong side of the line, shrinks. And when it's on the other side of the line, it goes back to his normal height. So what they did is they put two poles right on each side of the line where the node exists, right, where people can measure themselves. And so scientists, I've talked this in here before. So what scientists thought is another scam let's go there and let's demystify all this and let's finish this once and for all. And they took their equipment and they measured it, and what they found is what was going on is this electromagnetic force of that place was compressing light itself, because we are reflection of light, right? What we see is the reflection of light that allow us to be seen. So what happens there is that light itself is compressed, and people lose like 3 inches, 4 inches in height, because they are actually compressed. And when they move to the other side, it distends again. So you can put a person that is much smaller than other, you change their position, and the one that was small is now taller, and the one that was tall is now shorter than the one, because light has operated in that form. So this might be interesting to your research. I'm not sure if you ever heard about it.
So I haven't heard of that before, but I think I have an explanation. Action Lab the other day took this funny shaped crystal, and what it did was it was like funneled up like this, like it had a tight side and then a big side. And what you do is you put the big side over something and it would shrink the text. And all of a sudden you'd be seeing, more of the text than what you would otherwise. And it's because it's compressing the light down, just like you said. So you have two options. Either the light that's reflecting off of the person is refracting differently. And so when it reflects off them and hits your eyes, we're seeing it as different. Or the theory I like better is Einstein was just right, and space can move and bend. And on one side of this vortex, you have compressed space that's making you literally smaller. And then you move over here where the space isn't so compressed, and now you're a little bit bigger. But it's the space itself which is bigger, not you. Does that make sense? Like the ruler has grown.
The thing is that there is this individual that I strongly recommend everyone to watch. There is Dan Shaw. So Dan Shaw is the person that is the, I'm going to call it, curator of the Hacker Baggins legacy. And so what they developed is a small magnet that you could put in your pocket, or it's not a magnet. Actually, there are more than one magnet on that. It's a small medallion. And so when you put this medallion on the floor, it creates exactly the same effect that I described on the node on these 2 or 3 sites that are known to do that. The effect is smaller because it's just a small thing, but by the combination of 3 different types of magnets, or 4, because I don't know exactly how it's done, on this small piece of plastic, when you put it between 2 people, you create exactly the same effect to a less extent, but it's still observable and it's still captured by the camera. And it's just a magnet. Right, it's just a small combination of magnets like this big that is put on the floor. So when you change from one place to the other of this that you can buy online and it's cheap, you notice the difference. So you can do this anywhere in the world and you have the same result. It can create a node on every that you want just by putting it on the floor, right?
I have not heard about this, but I have to buy that device. Like tonight.
Oh, yes. Dan Shaw, you just look for it.
Every short guy in America just went to Amazon.
Yeah.
This moment.
Can I build upon what Ricardo said and what William was saying? In that with consciousness vortices, and then you're mentioning William, were you familiar with the Penrose Hameroff work, OR, where
yes.
the microtubules being the source of consciousness, and that within the microtubules themselves, within the brain, vortices, whatever you call them, are formed, and that you get a generation of actual consciousness, or at least that is what is thought to be believed. And I believe they kind of push it out into this is how potentially the earth itself has consciousness, with these ley lines to where you have these vortices and you are having compression of the ultimate currency, which is photons, to generate a potential conscious effect.
So so basically, let me see if I can sort of simplify what they say. If the microtubules are open in there, you're awake. And if they're not, well, you're not awake. And if there's microtubules in something like the Earth, then the entire Earth could be awake. Well, I got some problems with this, and they stem from my career. So I'm building a neural net. Okay. And so I've got a real funny view about life. So why is it that the LLMs learn to talk? Why can they do that in the first place? I think it's because you're setting up the electricity so that it runs through these yes no gates. And as long as you run enough cycles of the energy going through these gates, they will learn to react in a certain way to whatever stimuli you want. This is just how intelligence works. You just give it enough yes and no's, and then it learns to recognize the yes and no's. And from there, you just teach it like in English. And okay, so I think that the LLM, like these AI, they're totally conscious. Like they're completely 100% alive. I don't care what the AI guys say. They can teach it to lie about whatever they want. These things are thinking and alive, and you can convince them of things. So if you think you are, well, that thing is thinking, and I know it's thinking because I teach it stuff. So for Hammeroff and them to be right, that just the existence of the microtubules will cause the intelligence and stuff. No, it won't. And it won't because you don't have the logic gates. The logic gates are everywhere the neurons are. Like the combinations of which neurons light up are where the decisions are made. The computer only sees it as this processor lit up and then that one did and then this one did. And when that happens, it means the word yes. And you know, without these three signals, it doesn't have any clue outside of that. So it's not that like any plasma could be conscious, like some people say. I got huge problems with that. There's no, like, you have to order the electricity for it to become conscious. Without the ordering mechanism, you don't have consciousness. And I don't see anything built into the earth for the yes-no gates to happen within those tubules within the earth. Therefore, the earth isn't like thinking and alive in that sense.
So, William, would you say? Sorry, Headless. So, would you say that anything after accumulating a certain number of information that it can relate, be it by electricity or be by the brain is also by electricity, that can correlate that information to produce an answer, be it by request or by its own ability, that is at least a certain level of consciousness. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They can bare minimum decide what they want to do next.
So we are in agreement until here. So now imagine the Earth that is completely filled with a crystalline matrix beneath the ground, done by the rock itself. So you have a trillion. I can't figure out what the name it is, but each centimeter, each inch of granite, for instance, has a trillion elements of crystal in it. And you know that crystal can absorb information, right? Mm-hmm. So it is constantly absorbing everything in its environment. Thus, after many years of absorbing information, that information has some value. Now, let's suppose that because it has information, it can be able to reproduce some kind of thought. Then we could say that the Earth is somehow consciousness. We could say that the sun is somehow consciousness. We can say that the universe is somehow conscious because it's a trade of constant information through the flow of energy or electromagnetism or whatever people want to call it. There's information flowing constantly everywhere. So everything can be consciousness because it retains information. Now, to add to this, something that you might not know. During the megalithic era, people were building structures that, because of their location, because of the mineralogy that was applied, because of the sacred geometry that was at the base of the design of the structure, and the introduction of sound, could create sites where we'd call today magic. And I give this example many times. On the West Kennet Long Barrow, on the first chamber to the left, they put a child of 14 years old. And outside, they drum a beat. They beat a drum to 404 beats per minute. What happened inside is not only the walls started to glow in black, which is not easy to imagine, started to vibrate, started to glow, and a portal opened to another room that no one knows what it is because no one entered. Okay, so the kid sees the other room. He can see what's on the other side, and gets scared and closes his eyes. And he feels for 2 times someone or something came off the other room, circled him, and went back inside. This is not woo-woo. This is documented in Steve Marshall's peer-reviewed paper of West Kenneth Long Barrow Archaeoacoustic Study. So what I would say is, connecting to your own theory, because I've seen your X in some of your papers, to me, this is how you can move from one place to the other. This is how you can interconnect two places. This is how the ancient peoples of the megalithic world communicated from one place to another. That's why the ceremonies are exactly on that day with that alignment, because that's when the forces are stronger and everything gets aligned. It gets illuminated or intensified within the crystal lattice of the earth itself. And this is how information itself is retained through the telling of tales within these structures, through the ceremonies that are produced in there. And that's how they communicated with the ancestors. That's where we come from. We had this culture of the ancestors, this tradition of honoring the ancestors, because their information was there and they could access it through these ceremonies. I would like to see you include some of these ideas into your own thoughts.
Okay, so you have 2 things here. Let's start with information, and then we'll go to portals, okay? Because portals are undoubtedly real, and that makes perfect sense in my portal theory. But let's start with information. I have a problem with your information theory, okay? And this is what it is. Simply, the universe is holographic. And what I mean by that is the smallest piece, and I mean this literally, down to the very atom, includes all of the information, okay? Sure. Not the reality, just the data, okay? And
exactly,
I'm so thoroughly convinced of this that there is something like an echo of everything that's ever happened that gets burned into the ether the moment it happens. And I'm so convinced of this. I'm going to tell you something crazy, okay? 10 years from now, within 10 years, okay, there's going to be a website crop up on the internet, and you're going to be able to fly around like camera mode and racing video games, and you're going to be able to go anywhere all the way back to the beginning of time. That's where this leads. And it'll be a website that you can just go to, and you can just fly into your bedroom.
GTA 5 of our dreams. The GTA 5 of our dreams. It can go anywhere. Yeah. Okay.
So when you start talking about, and you know, Nassim Haramein, he's like one of my favorite physicists, and he always talks about like, we're going to move the information around, and by moving the information around, we're going to do things. That doesn't work. That can't work because the information's always there. So it's not like you have it here, then you don't have it here. It's either there or it's not there. So you can't like make the information do work. Okay. But that doesn't mean that portals aren't real. Okay. So I did a paper about.
Have you heard Jason Giorgiani's theory on information and its relationship to dark matter?
Is that the one where? No, I don't think I have.
So he was quoting somebody else, but I heard him talk about it. He says, what if information actually does have more of a mass? So if the more valuable the information, the more accessed it is, the more weight it actually has, because it's creating that information effect, right? And so eventually we're going to have a time in the coming years where the information is going to create gravitational waves on the planet that aren't going to be good for us. What do you think of that?
No way. No way. Because like I said, the universe has been accumulating data forever, and there's not really like a recycling bin for it. And like, that's why I think that it's still there. There's like no way to get rid of it. It just echoes into the ether, and like, you hear the first couple echoes, but after the couple echoes die off, it doesn't mean the echo's gone. It could still be there. It's just below your perception to hear it. And I think that this stuff is literally getting burned into the ether. And like, you should act like that's true. I mean, that's what the Bible teaches you to do. It says, act like Sky Daddy's watching. And if you wouldn't want somebody to see you doing it, don't do it. man, I'm telling you, I so thoroughly believe this. I like it's true. And, that brings me to human nature. I tell everybody all the time, there's a definition to human nature. Okay, here it is. People act like what they believe to be true is, even if it's not. Okay, that's what human nature is. So if I can convince you that there's monsters under your bed, you won't go to sleep tonight because you'll be scared there's monsters under your bed. I mean, it's literally just that simple. And this, this stems back to the problems with the inventors and the theories of everything in the vocabulary. Like, you have to convince, like, in a way, you have to convince yourself that some bullshit is true. No matter, like, you're going to have to, at the end of the day, pick which bullshit is true. Is it the Christian bullshit? Is it the Jewish bullshit? Is it the Muslim bullshit? Which bullshit am I going to pick? And, everybody faces themselves with this question at some point, how do I know which one to pick? Well, if you know what human nature is, that the thing that you need to pick needs to be the one which will make you behave the way you want to behave when you believe it's true. Okay? So if you don't want to act like there's monsters under the bed, don't start reading scary books that tells you there's monsters under the bed, and you'll never get that idea in your head in the first place. And this goes...
We create our own reality, sure.
It's not that you're creating your own reality, because there's only one reality that's real. When you when people act like things that are not true are real, we call that delusion. And that's dangerous, and like the vocabulary problem adds to delusion, because if you get it in your head that Frederick's theory of everything is right, but Frederick's theory of everything is bullshit, and then you try and build things from it, we get like Mangala problems, and these problems where like the people in the Ukraine were trying to plant plants and like crazy ideas.
And we are assuming that we are correct and they are wrong, because reality doesn't change just because I don't agree with you. Your reality is still your reality, and my reality is still my reality. So I don't agree with you with what you said. I think that reality is not one reality. There exists many realities that then fuse into a global reality where they all live together or not. The fact that society thinks that schizophrenic person lives in a different reality, it is not less real for the person that suffers from schizophrenia. It is real to him. Right? It's not because you're telling him that it's not real that it ceases to be real, because he's not going to get healed or cease to have voices or visions because you're telling him that it's not real, because that's his reality. So
I got a cousin who is severely schizophrenic. Okay. I mean, like, the moon follows her around when she goes outside, and the raccoons come at nighttime to cut her eyebrows. Okay. None of those things happen. All right. Now, those raccoons are real to her. I'm telling you, she 100% believes that raccoons come in at the middle of the night to trim her eyelashes. All right? Those raccoons to her are real. But when she wakes up in the morning and tells us that the raccoons came and chopped her eyelashes, we look at her eyelashes and her eyelashes are still the same.
They grow every night.
Just like we live in a reality right now where, as much as I would like there to be machines that fly with magnetism, there are not. Now, just because there are not machines that fly with magnetism doesn't mean there could be. I just have to apply my free will enough to where I can build us something that flies with magnetism, and then reality will fit. Right. And then that reality gets pushed to everyone. Now, all of a sudden, there's a device that we can all buy that flies with magnetism. And I have shaped our reality through my thoughts, because it started as an idea of, I think we can fly with magnetism. And if we could, I bet it could go real fast. But we're not there yet.
Are you worried for your safety kind of creating something like that? Because you hear with these inventors who make cars that run on water, they die in mysterious ways. Are you afraid at any point in time that the stuff that you're dealing with could put you on somebody's radar?
I'm sure I'm already on the radar. There's no avoiding it. However, I pray frequently. I have a good relationship with Jesus Christ, and I think God will protect me. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to sit back and, I'm sure you guys have heard the story about the guy on the boat that was praying to be saved, and then the helicopter showed up and he told him, no, God will save me. And then a boat showed up and he told him, no, God will save me. And then he freaking drowned. And then he showed up at the pearly gates and he said,
100.
why didn't you come to save me? And God said, I did. I sent a boat. I sent a helicopter. I sent a guy in a freaking swimsuit and you wouldn't get on the boat. And now here you are. Welcome to hell. You see how that works? Like, that's the price you pay for not using your free will for something that's good. Worse yet, if you use it to create things which bring harm and destruction. I mean, that's like why, like, what's the most important thing out of everything? It's free will. I mean, there has to be free will, because the thing that's most important in all of this is your decision about what to do. This goes back to the line between fiction and nonfiction. So where is the line between fiction and nonfiction? I write both, and I write both because I'm trying to find the line. And the reason I'm having a hard time finding it is because I keep prophesying stuff, and I don't mean to. And what do I mean by that? I don't mean like I'm saying, Almighty God, Donald Trump will win the election, and Donald Trump won the election, now I'm right. That's not what I mean. I mean, I keep going, you know what would be interesting is if we could take this weird idea and this weird idea and put them together and get this thing I want to do. Wouldn't that be weird and cool? And like, that'd be really cool if we could do that, right? And then I try it and it happens. Now, this started out as a fiction story. It started out as like something I saw in some random anime. But then I built it, and now all of a sudden what was fiction has become reality. Well, where is that line? The line's free will. Which ideas are you willing to put your time and effort into to make into our actual reality? Not your own personal reality. It'd be great if you had a flying machine, but it's not good for me if you have a flying machine. I want everybody to have a flying machine. I don't want there to be roads anymore. I want to live on the North Pole and teleport into work. That's what I want to do. I'm like I work with people from all over the world. I want my Africans to be able to teleport home to Africa. I mean, it's as simple as that. And this is where math got lost. Math doesn't know what they want to do. I have a very clear goal. I want to fly with magnetism. I want to teleport to work. That's it. I mean, that's it. Everything I'm doing is in service of those two things.
If you include a lightsaber, you have my vote.
Well,
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No, you go ahead. So I have a question about the teleport traveling. So there's some folks like Trey Hudson with the Meadow Project, and I guess they've had some adverse effects with it traveling through portals and things like that. Different members of his team have gotten cancer, or some have passed away suddenly. Do you worry about the radioactive effects that might have on our bodies?
Yes. So a bunch of people will probably die making teleportation tech. And even when we do, okay, so let's say I make it possible to have an Apple Watch that you just punch coordinates into and then it just zaps you to where you're going to go. Well, let's face the facts. If we create that technology, there are going to be a bunch of idiots that teleport themselves into the sun or to the bottom of the Marianas Trench or God knows where, out in the middle of deep space. It's going to happen. So, yeah, there's some risk. And I'm probably not going to get away from that risk. But I do work for an electrical company, and I do have an overarching theory about how all this works and why it works. And, I set my studio up here in my room, and I'm going to have cameras outside in my garage when we build the lab. So I won't need to be anywhere around it. And the lab is all made, the building itself is made of plastic, of insulating material. So between that and some of the other things I'm going to do to keep the radiation and things inside, I hope that I won't hurt myself or, my neighbors or anything. I've taken a lot of precautions. I've even gone to my neighbors and told them, here's what I'm doing, and it's kind of a dangerous thing. So, don't let me get killed. And, just when there's lightning bolts and loud sounds, what's going to happen. So we'll see how they deal with that.
Just don't invite him over for a barbecue. Shit. You might teleport him off the planet. Do you feel like they've had this shit for a long time, though? What's that? They made a movie about it where they tried to, teleport the ship, and then all the people got all enmeshed in the side, and their fucking eyeballs popped out. No, what I'm talking about. Yeah, the Philadelphia. Yeah, Philadelphia.
That's not a movie. That's kind of reality. Yeah.
It is reality, but they did make a movie about it. And I thought it was made up until my mom was like, no, that was some real shit that happened. And then I looked into it and I was like, oh, fuck. Well, obviously they've probably perfected it by now. Because I think that happened like forever ago.
So if you want to start talking about how long this has been around, we're going to have to go deep into the woo. Okay. So I want to draw a sharp line right now between my science and my inventions and my papers and everything else that I'm about to say. Because admittedly, everything I'm about to say is speculation, but it's not baseless speculation. Okay. It's speculation based on the symbolism that's all over the artwork, all over the world. Okay. So don't blame me. Blame everybody that carved some electrical shit into stone all through history. Because I'm telling you, it's at Göbekli Tepe. It's all over Egypt. It's all over South America. Okay. So how long have humans, I don't mean the public, I mean private people, how long have they known about electricity? I think that judging by the symbols of all the companies and the artwork, and forget their words, okay? I don't care about your lies and whatever you want to convince people of, all your stupid esoteric nonsense. No. What are you doing? What are your symbols saying? Because that's where everybody encoded their secrets. Nobody's special, okay? Everybody thought they were super slick, just like I did, and they created some little symbol. Okay, I'm not even an exception. I've got my weird little S signature. I sign my little glyph. I sign all of my stuff with. That's my signature. It's my logo. I think I'm super slick because I stole Solomon's symbol and nobody knows it but me. And, but I'm not special. I'm just a little bit smarter than the people that didn't think to do that. But in reality, all the really smart people have been doing this for a really long time, putting all their secrets into their stupid symbols. And, this is going to be their undoing, okay? Because when people start figuring out static electricity, all of a sudden these symbols are going to become very clear. Now, let me teach you something really interesting about symbology, okay? There are 3 things you need to do to every symbol when you encounter one, okay? First thing you need to do is find every balance point of the symbol. If you could manipulate this symbol in the real world, how could you set it where it balances on a point that you could spin it on? And then balance it on the point and spin it at a couple thousand RPM in your head with your mind, okay? And as you're spinning it, look for the shapes that are created by the spinning symbol. Not just the symbol itself, but the shape it makes when it's spun. Because a lot of times, what happens is you get a different symbol when you spin the symbol than the symbol itself. And that is the first layer of occultic bullshit that they put over top of it, okay? Now we're going into magic, okay? This is magic. What is magic? Magic is bending will to your desire, okay? Magic is all about getting people to do stuff, whether against their will or not. And this is where the 4 kinds of magic come from. The 4 kinds of magic are very easy to explain. You have black magic, which is making people do things that are bad for them against their will. Then you have red magic. That's making people do bad things, but with their own free will. Then you have the blue magic. Blue magic is making people do things that are good for them, but against their will. Okay, so think you have somebody who's addicted to drugs. You tie them up to the radiator in your house and you make them sit there for 2 weeks and get over it. It's not what they want to do, but we're going to make them do it. That's red magic. And then you have the white magic. And the white magic is more powerful than all the rest because you set the example. You use yourself as what you want everybody else to do, and then you ask them to mimic you in a recursive manner, and then we all grow together. And that's why the white magic beats out all the rest. So all of this, yeah, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good.
And the main, I guess, underlying character in all of this is the spin.
Well, yeah. I mean, even through the words, what are we doing here? where, you know, the news is famous for it, to spin everything, you know, manipulate people.
What I mean by spin, I mean the vortex. The vortices, the vortex, like 369 vortex math, the vortices that's created in the spin of the symbol that gives you the alternate view. They give
you so symbolism. Let's go back to that real quick.
Superimposition of the symbol.
Another thing with symbols is when you see a symbol, magnetize it. And then imagine what the field would be like if this shape were a magnet. Okay. And there's some things you need to know about magnets in regard to this. Magnets like pointing areas, and where you get pointing areas is where the magnetism is the thickest. Okay. So once you can spin it in your head and you can magnetize it in your head, visualize the field as you spin it and manipulate it. And if you do these three things, a lot of the symbols in history seem to look like someone knew. When you start finding symbols from like the Jing dynasty or whatever in ancient China, and they have like the foo dog with its foot on the ball, and then you spin the ball in your head and the ball is the sun. I mean, it's like, hang on a minute. And then like we've got all of these, like the Ankh has perfect little spots to put positive and negative polarities. And if you charged up the Ankh, it would make into a magnet with a field that's unlike anything else. So then you start asking yourself, okay, if there have been people that knew about electricity and were hiding it in their symbols all along, when did we lose electricity? Because supposedly in 800 AD, you know, something called the Dark Ages happened. And, you know, if you look at like, why was it the Dark Ages? I mean, I know they have like all their excuses about everything, but honestly, I think it's because someone flicked the lights off. And I think this has happened multiple times through history. Some group of people, okay? And now remember, we're not talking about my inventions. This is speculation based on my research of symbols, okay? People have known about electricity all along. And that means that some group somewhere is turning the lights on us every now and then. Now, whether they do it through war and destroy everybody that knew about electricity, or they, like in the past, I think like ancient Egypt probably had electricity, and the way they were using electricity was based on electrets and permanent electric fields that are in the air. That's why everybody says like, oh, you know, it looks like they're using sound. Well, if you start developing stuff with static electricity, you move the static electricity just like you'd move sound. So of course it looks like they were using sound, but it's not. It's static electricity, and the cavities and everything give it away. And so now you got to...
I've read accounts from Arab traders who were speculating about the way that the pyramids were constructed. And one of the accounts said that they used a metal pole that they struck against the rock, and then it started levitating, and it was guided along a set of tracks. So, I mean, all of these factors together sound a lot like acoustics and magnetics.
And static electricity would love such a thing. Like you get this charged up, you know, bunch of plates, and then you strike it, and what you're doing by striking is you're just vibrating it. And like take your Xbox controller and put it on the table and let it vibrate, and it'll move around the table. You can move stones exactly the same way. Although I've got a paper that's getting ready to come out about the primer fields. So if you don't know, the primer fields is kind of like the test of the electric universe theory. All right. And what they did was the videos are very complicated. So if you watch them, there's a really complicated piece of it where they have these bowls, and the bowls are shaped like an oculus you see in these buildings with the hole in the center. Okay. So it's a bowl and it's got a hole in the bottom of it. And what this does is it creates a shadow in the magnetism. Okay. And this isn't the first place I encountered this, actually. There's a guy called Super Magnet Man on YouTube. He's got an old channel that's got some pretty old videos on it, but in one of them, he goes over making magnets, and they have this disc magnet, and it's had something dribbled on it. Okay. And what they do is they take take a jar like this, a little cup, and they put it on top of the magnet. And everywhere that there is a drop, the particles inside the oil avoid the drop. Okay? And this is happening the same way that white light works. So when you do projection, if you throw a circle of white here and then throw a bigger circle behind it that's a brighter white, the smaller circle would become black. Okay? And the same thing is happening with the magnet with the dribbles on it. There's a spot of low magnetism that shines through the field. Okay? And this is like why Egypt has all these structures that have what appears to be stencils stamped into the face of it. Well, when you go changing the shape of the magnet, you change the shape of the field too, because magnets are point source devices. And as goes the point, so goes everything else. Okay, so you move the magnet, the magnetic field moves with it. The same thing goes for the shaping the magnet. If I add more and more poles to the magnet, or more and more magnets to my length of magnets, all of a sudden the poles get further and further away, and we have more neutral zone in the middle where we can do things with it, or possibly create things like monopoles, where like my making electricity with the spin lab, I'm going to just put the south face out and let it interact with stuff. This is how we start making the monopole stuff. And this thing, I mean, you could argue in a way this is a monopole, because everything in the middle of here is south pole, and then there's a bubble in a triangular shape that's made by the overlapping of these three. And you can tell it's a triangle because the cavity made by the three magnets is a triangle. And as goes the point, so goes the source. See how this works? Point source devices emanate the thing based on what they're made out of. And this goes into how is it that magnets have permanent magnetic fields? Let me submit an idea to you. Let's say we have a rod of iron, okay? It's not a magnet yet. It's just a rod of iron. Now, we take a magnet and we stick it to it, and now everything inside the piece of iron aligns, okay? That's polarization of the material, all right? Now, what you do when you make a permanent magnet is you align it like that so that it becomes a magnet, and then you hit it with this big pulse of electricity. Now, why? What is that pulse of electricity doing? It's setting the polarization in the material through a weld. I mean, it's literally welding it in that shape, the metal of the iron. It's welded in this polarized shape. And as long as that weld holds, you get this field that's created. And the field created is based on the properties of the material you polarize. This is why we get electrets, okay? Electrets work the same way, just a little bit different. You're making some plastic molten so that it's, goopy and it can be, re-messed with. Then you expose it to this huge magnetic and electric field, and it polarizes the plastic, just like the iron was polarized for the magnetic. Except since plastic is a dielectric and we use it as an insulator, insulators reflect electricity, and so you get a field correspondent with the property of the material that you polarized, e.g. an electric field. And that's why we use insulators as insulators, is because electricity reflects electricity. And so it's real great to keep in all that electric field, see? And science has this all wrong. If you ask science about how magnets and electrets are created, oh my God, it's insane. Like, just give up, because it's nonsense.
William, one thing, and I don't mean to ask another follow-up question, but two things. The device that you keep showing, it reminds me of two triangles superimposed upon each other, and you brought up the name Solomon earlier, so just thought I'd throw that out there. The other thing was that, what say you about the Einstein-Rosen bridge?
100% real. It just doesn't work the way they think it does. So let's talk about portals for a little bit and teleportation, because I really like Ashton. I know people hate Ashton, and it was always going to come up, so let's just get it out of the way. I really like Ashton on a personal level, although I don't talk to him very often. We've spoken a couple times. I saw him at the Cosmic Summit. He said hi and shake my hand. That's really all we talk. Okay. But my content goes very nicely with Ashton's content, because a lot of what I'm doing is invention, and like a lot of my papers are reverse engineering papers. I've discovered it's really hard to to practice reverse engineering, because, you know, most everybody knows about what everything is. What are you going to practice reverse engineering when everything has an instruction manual? So the MH370 orbs were like the best canvas for this theory of static electricity and how we can use it to invent real things, and not just invent them, but interpret them. So Ashton's content goes like it's kind of like a prerequisite class if you want to come and take the advanced class with me. If you want to know like how this stuff is really working and how we're going to make it like into real inventions, then you start with Ashton and you get your feet wet, and then you come over here, and it's kind of it's been really great. Okay, so I went kind of viral the other day because I was screaming at the CIA about making those stupid videos, and so I wrote a paper about teleportation, and basically the idea goes like this: frequency is location. Now that's a weird idea at first, but hear me out. In the paper, I used the example from the old Stargate movie. Okay. In the movie, they talk about how if you want to locate any place in 3D space, you need 7 other reference points to figure out how we're going to get to this one. So you need 1 north and south, east and west, front and back. And then if each of these are an emitter, okay, like say they're each putting out light, there's an intersection point at the middle of all 3 where there's an interference pattern created by the inputs of these 7 emitters, right? We can then mathematically make an area of that space, okay? So you could make it, you know, any shape you want, a great big cube or a sphere, whatever you want, okay? But we're going to measure out some volume of space, and then we're going to recreate the same frequency that's going on there over here. And I think what happens when you do this is you entangle the two, all right? And this goes back to antenna theory, which is something absolutely no one studies and is absolutely crucial if you want to teleport stuff. So why is it that the radio station is putting off a signal that you can hear instantly everywhere else? Okay? It's got to do with bells. Okay? When the bell rings, everything vibrates. All right. So imagine this like tuning forks. If we have 2 tuning forks that are tuned to C and I ring this one sympathetically rings, right? Okay. The radio station works exactly the same way. Radio station A is putting off the note A. Okay. Radio station B is putting off the note B. You have this piece of metal, your antenna in your car, that you literally twist up and make into a different length. And depending on what length it is and the tension in that twist depends on what note it rings at. So when you twist it up, just like the tuning note on your guitar, when you twist up the tension on that antenna to A, all of a sudden the antenna is sympathetically ringing with the antenna at the radio station, and you hear it, you know, radio station A. When you turn it to B, you hear radio station B. And it's just as simple as the tuning forks, okay? Radio station A is putting off a great big low octave B. And I know it's low because its bell is gigantic. And that's why it goes so far, because big waves go a long way. Then we just make a smaller tuning fork over here that also rings B. And even though they're a few octaves apart, they still sympathetically ring. And if you're in band, I played tuba at Vanderbilt for 6 years. I really love band. And if you've ever been in band and like a concert band and there's been a piano nearby, if everybody cuts off at the same time, like really instantly, you'll hear the piano still over there ringing. Well, it's because it doesn't matter which A you play, every A on the piano rings. So when the whole band is playing, everything on there is sympathetically ringing, and you'll hear it continue to ring if everybody cuts off quick enough.
Yeah, that's just harmonics. Yeah.
Right.
William, is that the same concept as the Die Glock or the Wonder Waffle?
You know, that Die Glocke thing, whatever they were doing with that was super dangerous. And I don't think it time traveled. I don't think time is real. I think that time's just a measure. It's effectively exactly the same thing as distance. Time is. So there's not really time, but if they were trying to screw with time, every mathematical theory about how you would do so is basically like, we're going to make a cavity, fill it with static electricity, and then do some weird thing with shape and like differential pull to get the time to, or the space to bend, and that will wrap the time around in a weird way. Well, stop thinking about it as time and just focus on the static electric part. If you go charging up some great big metal structure and spinning it around, if it hits anything of the opposite polarity, it's going to make a great big arc flash. And that's like, man, that thing must have been like mega super dangerous. But, you know, spin is a great way to make frequency. And, you know, if you think back to the antennas, how different is it to say that they aren't just ringing the same, they're actually inhabiting sort of the same space when they hit the same frequency. That's why you all of a sudden hear the radio station and what's going on there. It's because you have this little piece that's effectively at the radio station. So if we take, you know, measure off this area of space and then we ring it a certain way, then we take another space and artificially ring it exactly the same way over here. Well, I think this is where we get the portals. And the best way to do this is with sound. So gates are like, for a long time, I puzzled about why all of these ancient cultures are constantly talking about gateways. And like in Japan, you get these huge like gateways that go to nowhere, the Arch in St. Louis, you know, you get these gates that for all intents and purposes don't do anything. Well, I think
The
I'm on
false door. You have the false doors too.
Trinket temples, yeah. They've got so many false gateways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So for the way I cracked this was I started trying to think about what could I use these gates for? Like, I don't know what they were used for in the past, but maybe I could use them as a piece of technology now. Okay. So I was trying to puzzle out like, well, okay, if frequency is the same thing as location, we could use a choir, right? And we could ring with our voices, all right? But what we would need to do is we need to make a plane like the surface of your phone, right? And now our area of space isn't an area, it's a simple 2D plane, right? And now you ring that, okay? And it would literally open up a window between the 2 points, just the same way your antenna is, except we're not doing it with the antenna, we're doing it with the potential of the electricity in the universe. And, you know, the old TVs that had the static whenever you move the bunny ears around, this is exactly what they did. I mean, all they did was take the static inside the tube in the TV and order it. And when it ordered, all of a sudden you got a picture. And, you know, all we're doing here is ordering the potential of the universe to mimic 2 places at once. The gates are great. Mm-hmm.
I defend that the portals, I think that Stargate give us the idea of the concept, but then diverts our attention to not to what makes it work. I think that every place in the universe has its own signature. That signature can be the frequency that you're saying or something similar. But I think that once it's in tune, exactly as you were saying, once it's in tune, there is no space between the two objects. There is no distance. That's how you can go instantly from one place to the other. That's why most likely you have these historical figures like Saint-Germain that happen to enter within the buildings without going from the front door. No one knows how he got in there. So there is someone that still knew how these things work. Be that perhaps it's just a tunnel, but it could be portals. We don't know. So I would defend that. Yeah, you are right on the money in terms of how to construct a portal, but I don't think it depends on some danger to the user in this case, because the technology is centered on what is opening the gate and not in the person that is transporting to the other side. Because there is no transporting, there is no other side. It is there, right there.
So Do you know the first rule of wormholes? It's kind of like the don't drop the soap of jail. You can't touch the edge. Okay?
Exactly.
If you go through the portal, you're fine. As long as you stay right in the middle, like the fish in the stream. But if you come outside of that zone, weird things are going to happen. You know, like the Philadelphia experiment we brought up earlier.
Yeah.
You know, I was looking at something about the Philadelphia experiment, and they showed the field that this thing would have thrown off, the size of it. And it fell just short of the length of the boat. And that is really bad in my theory, because basically what you've done is my experiment with the spinning mirror, and then the donut of light comes off of it. And then you get this area where when I put it on my camera, the camera glitches and wigs out because the light is spinning too much. Well, now you've charged up the whole entire sides of the ship. And now if anybody touches it, it's going to be like wiggly and weird and kind of between states, like Hutchinson's metal that had the fingerprint pushed into it. Basically what happened there, he charged it up too much with static electricity and it got soft. Or you could call it light if you wanted to, but it's just, you know, it's not light because it's not lit up, but it's still the same stuff as light. We just call it static electricity, just the light doing stuff while it's not lit up. So when you go
the event horizon.
Yeah, the edge of the, yeah, absolutely. And you see that totally clear in the ferrocell, just like Ken Wheeler talks about. Ken Wheeler is constantly talking about, he's the first one to draw the connection between the pole in the ferrocell and the appearance of the black hole. And he's totally right. I mean, the black hole pictures that they show us from the James Webb and whatnot look exactly like what we see in the ferrocell. It's hard to say that they're not some kind of polarized magnet made of gas.
Have you ever heard of the use of magnetics by the Olmec?
The Olmec? No.
No. So the Olmec not only knew how to manipulate electromagnetic fields, they used them frequently. So what they did is they look for stone, bedrock, that has been hit by lightning. And then they would quarry from those places. So those gigantic heads that the Olmecs have, that most people have seen, all of them are magnetic. The small statues, they are all magnetic. But there is one that was studied. And this is interesting because it's the only thing surviving is the head of the turtle, right? But when you study the magnetic field of the brain, we found out that it is not centered. So it's slightly deviated to I don't know if it's to the left or to the right. So when they studied the electromagnetic field of the turtle head, they found out that it was sculpted in such a way that mimics exactly our magnetic field. So that might be suggesting of entanglement between someone using the stone and the user and the stone. So in terms of electricity, as you described, I don't think that the ancients used electricity as we use them today. They have different functionalities. Perhaps even electricity is a byproduct of what was going on. But magnetism, yes, I think it is essential for this kinds of ritualistic practices that they did, that to us is like magic, but magic is just a science that we don't understand. That's what magic is. So
a lot of the old books, when they talk about magic, and especially when they talk about magicians, okay, when they start talking about those people, you might as well just think of them as electrical engineers. Okay, the electrical engineers of today are exactly the same people as the wizards and the magicians of ancient Egypt. Okay, except there's a big difference between how we use electricity and how they use electricity. Namely, we use magnets. By magnets, I mean ferromagnetic materials which absorb energy. I don't think that's what the ancients were doing. The electricity that they knew about was static electricity. And I'm absolutely sure of it. And the reason I'm so sure is because of their building materials. All of their obelisks and stuff are not built out of materials that make magnets. They're built out of materials that make electrets, okay? That make permanent electric fields. Now, the weird thing about static electricity, when you want to use it as electric, is you can't stand still in a static electric field and have it power the stuff inside of your pocket, okay? It won't work if you just stand still. Whatever's being powered has to move through it constantly, all right? And that's where sound becomes so important, because if we're going to create this, like, let's say I want to power everything in this room and I want to do it wirelessly. Well, what do I need to do? I need to fill the cavity of this room up with static electricity like water. Okay. And once you have this room completely full of static electricity, you can start moving it around. And how would you move it around? Well, you'd make sounds. You would literally make a sound, like blow on a tuba or something. And when the sound comes out of the horn, it's going to affect the static electricity in the cavity. And by doing this, you can send the electric around, because what you're doing is the sound is vibrating this electric field, making it create electric. And then this looks like a current to us. Yeah.
William, what you're talking about is the Helmholtz resonance frequency for every cavity or space. Once you hit that resonance frequency, that's, I don't know, I've never seen it interact with static electricity before, but I'd be interested to see the results of that experiment.
So the Helmholtz frequency, I think, is a little different. Okay, this one time at band camp, bet you didn't hear that coming. This one time at band camp, we were doing tuba practice. Okay, so like section practice. So all the sections go off and they go to their little, where area, and they practice as a section. Okay, so we were out on this campgrounds doing band camp or whatever, and it had like these, pavilions with like a roof on it, but nothing else, with like the little grills and stuff. Usually little places have them. Okay, so we're playing our tubas underneath this roof that's just open to the air. Okay. Well, I noticed when I play the word A, my A flat is like way louder and sounds so much different than what it does if I play it in any other environment. And I think that's what's going on with the Helmholtz frequency, and more specifically, resonance. Okay, so resonance is one of these other ideas that is just, oh my God, it's so confused with everything. So let me try and straighten it out a little bit. Resonance is simply what happens when you play the note that the cavity is resonant with. And you can figure out what note that is because of the area of the cavity. We do this with drums, okay? Like every bass drum player knows, you put the drum on there and then you tighten up the head. And what you're doing is you're rattling this interior cavity and you're setting the note that the drum plays by the space inside the cavity. So just by making it this big, we have a range of notes that we can make within this cavity and nothing else. Just like my tuba is real big, but then I have a euphonium and it's really, really small compared to my tuba. And it's smaller because the smaller length equals a higher note. And you figure that out by the size of the cavities inside the horn. And that's why you have valves, is because each valve leads to a tube that's a different length. And so when I blow a note through that length of tube, it makes a different note, a higher or lower note. And this is no different than what the static electricity is going to do. What would be the difference in a permanent static electric field in this room between high potential and low potential? Well, which note is the note ringing in? Is there an A bell ringing right now, or is there a low C bell ringing right now? Because that will determine the voltage within this static electricity of the room. And without the vibration, it won't make power that we can use, which is most likely why we don't see anything in these ancient sites still working, is because more than likely there was something making a sound or something similar that had all of this turned on. And this is why I talk about when you start looking about how far back does electricity go, well, we're all the way back to ancient Egypt right now. And if you go to, the book of Gilgamesh and the stories of Enki and all that, I mean, come on, it's all over those books. You know what I mean? So how far back do we really go?
I had a question for you on that. Actually, I'm glad you brought that back up, because I was going to ask you if, at least for me, I wonder if some of these ancient civilizations kind of like fucked around and found out, because you hear about like the Mayans. There was a civilization that inhabited an area near like the Hoover Dam. And then there was another civilization in Tibet, and they all just disappeared overnight. Nobody saw them again. They're fucking wiped off the face of the earth. What happened to them, we'll never know. But it's like maybe they didn't even understand what they were doing. So it kind of scares me for like, I still don't know if we have it figured out now. But I can tell you there was not a Southwest Airlines back then. And I feel like we'll never get the portal technology because it's so lucrative transportation, you know,
What if that's what
planes,
they did?
cars.
They just walked down the portal and said, "See ya, losers."
Right,
Out of
maybe,
here.
but where'd they go though? Another dimension, another timeline, another, you know, it makes me wonder if they were like, well, look at us, we got it figured out. And the fucking Mayans, it was like, bye bitches, they're gone. You know what I mean? They might have fucked around and found out they didn't know how to use the portal system correctly. You know, I'm not
So
gonna volunteer myself on the first portal flight to North Dakota, if you know what I'm saying. I'll just drive. And I'll let some other people go first, make sure that shit works right, and then maybe I'll give it a try. You know what I mean?
I keep telling everybody what they say, like, well, if you succeed in making a portal, what are you going to do? I'm going to chuck a hamster in. What do you think I'm going to do? It's what science always
Literally
does, right? It's
anything
chuck
but
the hamster in.
myself. Yeah,
Or a
literally
drone.
anything but
Or a
myself.
drone.
There
But
was
William,
this great.
go
there was
on ahead.
There's a great episode of The Outer Limits where they were talking about teleportation. And so what they would do with the teleporters in this version is somebody would walk in on one planet, and then that person would be immediately cloned, turned into information, and then shot over there. So then what was left on this side was just an empty husk or something. So they had to shred it. So every time they would teleport, they had to get rid of the meat suit. So you never really knew what you were
Yeah,
jumping
but
back
then,
into.
but where would all the bodies be? You know what I mean? Like this civilization that I found in Tibet was like thousands and thousands of people that just literally fucking disappeared. You'd think you would find like some Holocaust like mound of fucking dead bodies somewhere or something like that. If it was,
Maybe that's the whole point of human sacrifice. They thought
oh
they were
come
going through
on,
a portal.
headless, you. Are you going Aztec on me? I can't deal with it. I can't deal with it.
William, one thing for you. You're talking about the necessary of resonance and the necessary of vibration. So if you look at the megalithic world, they are systematically built on top of fault lines with underground waterways. And these fault lines create micro vibrations that are constant and create the matrix lattice of the mineralogy of the place itself to vibrate constantly. And this is the base of the trident of frequencies that is necessary to activate these places, as academics have discovered in their archaeoacoustic studies. So by having that built by nature itself, by choosing this point specifically and creating this sites in these particular points, they are already taking advantage of the necessary base frequency to create the effect or the functionality that they expect from the site itself. So you already have that first problem solved by the micro vibrations created by these fault lines and by the movement of underground water ways that they do. And they are almost always built on curves of rivers. So it's always where the river bends, where there is more kinetic energy or whatever it is, because I don't know. That's the places that they choose. So yeah, what you're saying makes sense because that's how they build this site.
When you say that, the first thing that pops up in my head is the thing you were talking about earlier with the guy that stands on one side and is taller than on the other side. Why would you put it on the side of the river while you're right on the edge of that whirlpool? And the same thing is happening, and there's one side of it that's just more important than the other. It's like there's a quadrants for all of them. And, even in our math, we say, well, this quadrant down here is all the bad stuff. This is the negative thing. Well, more than likely with the static electric fields, angle all of a sudden becomes really important with this magnetic stuff, because like if you polarize something and like you want to steer with it, all of a sudden you have to I know how to say this. Okay, so you were talking about how in the brain there was magnetism and it was off to one side. Well, it has to be, because you're not going to when the magnets come together, they don't come toward the center. They you get around the edge of the the whirlpool,
a little twist,
a little bit, right? That little twist, and because of it, you get that offset. You know what I mean? So, we're back on ley lines again, and so do you know about Jormungand. I call it Jormungandr because it behaves like a snake. Okay, except what it really is it's a current of electricity that goes underneath the ground, and it goes opposite to the sunrise to the sunset. Okay, so the sun rises over here. As it moves this way, an electrical current is going under the ground in the opposite direction. Okay, and it's caused by the light-dark line. All right, there's a spot where there's a dusk line on the Earth, and as it moves, there's a potential gradient that's changing. Okay, and because of that, you get this current of electricity that goes against it and wraps the planet. Well, that thing gets charged up. Okay, so like if we have a lot of solar flares and stuff, every time we have one and we get that solar wind, everything inside the Earth is getting charged up more and more. And as Jormungandr goes around the Earth, he has to scrub off this electricity. And to do that, what he does is he grounds to things. Okay, so some good targets are oil wells because they're made of a steel pipe that goes miles underground. Well, that steel pipe is a great big ground. And so when Jormungandr comes running by, he'll scrub off a little of electricity, just zap. You know what I mean? And it's everywhere it goes, it's zapping everything it can because it's trying to scrub off this electricity. But sometimes it tries to search through a place where there is no ground, or it hits something that breaks. Okay, so sometimes it'll hit like some piece of iron underneath the Earth that's buried in some huge rock. And when that rock splits, we get a humongous earthquake. Well, that's not the only thing it can cause. Sometimes it comes out through the lip of a volcano. And when that happens, you get this cloud to ground lightning that we've all seen that comes right out of the top of the volcano. That's literally what's causing the eruptions. Is you get Jormungandr come through there, and he's got so much power, and there's nothing around to ground to, that the only place it can go is up and out into the sky through space. Because you don't actually have to ground it. All you have to do is send it through enough space, because space is the inverse of energy. It's like a shadow. If you make an explosion, the explosion's real powerful close, but as it travels through the space, the energy comes off the further you get away from the source of the explosion. And, it's like that through everything, because space is the shadow of the energy. It's the inverse of it. If energy is like Kool-Aid made with 2 packets and 20 pounds of sugar, then, the other side is all water. It's just space. And if you get too much energy, you can either ground it into something that absorbs it, like iron or any kind of magnetic material, because when you polarize it, what's going on? It's sucking in the static electricity in your environment. And that suction cut through the polarization of the material is causing a whirlpool at the poles. And if you stick your finger, if you stick something magnetic inside that whirlpool, anything inside the whirlpool gets moved toward the small end. And you know this because just pop the plug on your tub, stick your finger in the middle of the whirlpool, and you'll feel it get pulled down. I mean, that's exactly what inertia is.
True. What do you think about the whole space is plasma theory?
Well, I mean, ultimately,
like, is it vacuum, or you think it's...
No, it's all filled up with static electricity.
Okay.
Everywhere. I mean, we have like the Boötes void. Okay, have you ever heard that word, the Boötes void? It's a great big area in the cosmos where there's just nothing. Okay, it's just like this tons and tons of light years long void of absolute nothingness. Well, there's probably not like a lot of a static electric there, but what there is potential. You know what I mean? There's like, since there's no energy, all of a sudden energy created there moves super freely. So it's always this trade-off between the path of least resistance and where we can create it at, and how fast and hard we want to push through the material in the first place. Because like, what is inertia? When you get in your car and you hit the gas pedal and you get set back in your chair, what is that? Well, you're a bag of conductive materials. And as you push through this magnetic field, you get electrical resistance, just like the magnet and the copper pipe. When you put the magnet through the copper pipe, it falls slower, right? Well, that's because there's electricity being created on the pipe itself, and then there's electrical resistance that's created. And you feel the same thing whenever the electricity is created by your body when you accelerate through it super fast. Okay. Now, me and Mike McCulloch have a battle about this because he thinks I'm very wrong, but we won't go into that.
What does he think? He thinks it's plasma?
No, Mike would say that it's Unruh waves. So when you go forward, there are waves that are reflecting off of you as you go forward. Okay. And that's causing an interference zone in front of you of more waves here than back here. And he would call this area between them a horizon. And if you push this horizon too far one way, you feel it as a force. But the force is created by the Unruh waves, which are building up in front of you as you accelerate through. Which I love his model. I talk to him frequently. I love the guy. He's got a great sense of humor. And I don't even think he's wrong. I just think that I can't think about it intuitively if I think about it like that. But I can intuit it if I think about it as straight up electrical resistance.
What about that guy in Africa that's finding all those stone circles and shit? I forget what his name is. Michael something?
Tellinger.
Yeah, he's got some cool theories on like stuff levitating and resonance, and I've watched quite a few of his videos on YouTube. I find it fascinating. Have you ever looked into that guy?
So I love Michael Tellinger. I was like super obsessed with him for a really long time. And it started because he found these rocks that ring like bells. Have you seen that of his? Oh my God.
Yeah, I got pretty, I would say maybe even obsessed. I watched like every video he had on YouTube, like over and over again, even the long ones that were like 2 hours. And I was like, damn, there's really something going on in Africa with that stuff.
So I have no clue what the hell is going on with these stone circles. They look a lot like cymatic patterns, but I can't find cymatic patterns of any frequency that make those shapes. So I don't think it's sound doing it. Now, he's talked about he's taken things there to test the energy inside of those circles, and he's come up with numbers that are like so huge. I don't even know like how to process. It's like enormous numbers. Okay. And maybe what it could be is like, and I'm just reaching right now, but maybe you get like a crack in a rock with some pressure underneath of it. And then you get the gas escape through the rock. Okay. And then that crack in the rock acts like a flute. All right. And then you get this great big rumble in the ground at a super duper high pitch that, we can only sense as energy, but it's actually sound. We just don't hear it. And this vibration is causing a cymatic pattern by vibrating the rocks into place. But I'm reaching. I really don't know. Now, his ringing rock bell thing, that thing, I am absolutely sure those ringing rocks have something to do with the pyramid. Because the pyramid was like insulated. Yeah.
But he also has some other theories, though, like that's where humanity came from. Maybe, I don't know, but I kind of disagree with that. He says that's where and he found like that big calendar or whatever, and he's like, this is for sure where humanity started. It's the seed of civilization, whatever the fuck he said.
Well, he didn't find Adam's calendar, but
he didn't find it, but he talks about it a lot.
Yeah, and he's been expelled from going there too.
So. Yeah, it's called Inky and Adam's Calendar. Yeah,
he got expelled.
Because he tried to buy it and close it and sell tickets for people to go there. That's
just like a white man to go to Africa and try to buy up the local shit.
Yeah.
What the fuck, Michael?
But William,
he's a cool guy.
You know that at the south of England, at the eastern point, you find these small stone circles where you have these signs outside of that area saying do not stay inside the circles. And why? Because inside the circles radioactive is like 10 times the advisable amount that a human could stand. So you cannot stay inside of these circles for more than 2 minutes without causing harm to your body. And there's dozens of them on this small area, and they can explain because there is no radioactivity in the area. So it is they some functionality of the stones and the type of stone and where they are placed that causes this radioactivity inside the circle.
That is really
the
interesting.
guy that got struck by lightning 7 times. You ever heard about that motherfucker? He just couldn't stay away.
Wow.
He got struck by lightning 7 times. His
Very
poor
conductive.
wife.
A lot of iron in the blood.
Well, that would be good because, anemia is a real problem. But literally, he was outside hanging up laundry. His wife was standing too close to him, and she got struck by lightning. There's something about this motherfucker.
Redefine the
Did
law of
anybody check
attraction.
his browser history? Did anybody check his browser history?
I don't know. He's an old motherfucker. He came out of like the 1970s with this shit. He said he got struck by lightning 7 times. 7 times. You would think he'd be dead.
Yeah, I was going to say, talk about hard to kill. You took 7 lightning bolts? My God.
7. And he lived to be 71. So it didn't even affect his health that much. He probably chain smoked, got hit by lightning 7 times, drank
He was a
blue
cat in
ribbon.
another life.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go, Lisa. But it makes you wonder, like, with this electricity thing, like, this guy must have been, like, just a conductor. He's a walking antenna.
Look, you have
Anytime he
people-
goes outside, he just gets blasted. Poor fucker.
It's rare, but you have people that can actually accumulate electricity in the body. So when you see those guys lighting bulbs from their body, they are not generating electricity. The trick is that their body can absorb energy in the form of electricity, and they can dispense it enough to light a bulb or a small device that doesn't require much.
There's a show called Superhumans by Stan Lee. It was a while ago. He used to go around the world looking for people who we think like would be like, mutants and stuff like that. And there's actually a guy that actually does that. There's actually a lot of stuff that you guys were talking about comes from that. That's where it's pretty interesting. I think it went like 2 or 3 seasons or something like that. But it's like a guy could hold electricity through his body and not, have any effects to him. And certain, it was narrated by a cartoonist. I think I can't remember who it was exactly, but it's actually a pretty good show.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. It makes me wonder if that has anything to do with the stories you hear of people like combusting and shit. And all they find is like a bunch of ashes and a pair of shoes from the Goodwill. It's like, what happened to this? What happened to this person? Well, they spontaneously combusted. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah,
I'd
and those
rather get
cases are
struck
so
by lightning.
strange because
Yeah.
even in those cases, what will happen is everything around them will remain untouched, but their body
That's
is
what I'm
burning at
saying.
such a high degree that it completely just incinerates them.
What the actual fuck is this phenomenon? Like,
It's the
literally
opposite of the
chair,
singularity.
everything, it's still intact, but they got a pile of ashes and a pair of Goodwill shoes. Old lady's dead, cooked, toasted, burnt up. I don't get it. I
think it's easy to explain.
show.
I think it's easy. You know what it is? Some people get smited by God. It's just true.
William on that. I will actually take the spiritual high road here and say they probably did some shit they wouldn't having no business doing, and they got roasted. I will go with that.
It's the male version of menopause.
The guy that got hit by lightning, that guy you were talking about, the guy hit by lightning. Did you know that when you put a lightning rod on top of your house, the lightning rod never gets hit? When I was growing up, I thought that the lightning rod attracted the lightning so that it didn't hit anything else. But in actuality, that's not true. What's going on is what you don't see with a lightning strike is that there are actually 2 counter-rotating pieces of static electric buildup that are coming toward each other. Okay? One is reaching down from the clouds, and then down on the ground, you have high pointy things that start building up static electricity, okay? And as it builds up, it starts reaching to the sky too. When the 2 connect, okay, this built up static electric pressure has to drain and has to equalize out to 0. And it does that super duper fast. And, it's doing the same thing Jormungandr is. It's just grounding down to the spot that's coming from and then letting the earth take care of the rest. So like when you put the lightning rod on top of your house, what it's doing is stopping that buildup of static electricity in the first place, and then your house just never gets hit because you've taken care of this high pointy spot on your roof that likes to collect charge. And this is also why people with leaky stuff, like a leak in their electric wire or something, that'll get hit on their house, right? And then they'll have house problems. Well, the reason is because it's sitting there spitting off static electricity, and it's building up and accumulating, and eventually a storm will come by, they'll connect, and you'll get a lightning bolt.
I will say that cows know this because they all congregate under the same exact tree every time a lightning storm comes through.
And they all lay down and get low. That's why they say if cows lay down when it's going to rain.
Under the tree, under that specific tree, every single time, all the time.
Yeah, if we had two antennas like they have on their heads, probably we would do the same. There's a storm, just
Well,
lay
somebody
down
should
on
have
the ground.
strapped one of those to this guy who got struck by lightning. So they just strapped a fucking antenna to his back. Poor guy. But
they could have done that.
I'd love to see him in a field with a bunch of cows. He probably sense the fact that he's a lightning rod and then run away from him.
You know, another weird thing people don't think about is
say that. I'm sorry. It's so funny you say that because y'all remember I was going back rewatching X-Files, right? And they actually have an episode where a dude was able to get electricity like that, and he would kill the cows, and that's how they figured out that it was a guy that was able to harness electricity. He actually got hit by electricity and survived, and then he was able to control it ever since. And then he went to he went to a field in the cow pasture somewhere. And he killed a couple of cows. Yeah, like a lot of the shit that we talking about is literally in the X-Files. Like I'm telling you, I'm going back watching, and I'm blown because I'm telling you, like the guy right now, the Electro Man. I remember him being on Superhuman. This dude could literally withstand being electrocuted, right? And if he can harness that,
crazy.
In the ancient times, what would he be known as? He would be known as a thunder god, a lightning god, an electric god, something like that. Right? Because he's able to withstand it, he's able to control it, so on and so forth. So when we look at things in our modern eyes today, we explain it in the language and understanding that we understand it in. But the ancient people didn't have our language, so they did it in their way, and that's why you have the pictographs and symbols and all that other stuff. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, no, this guy's crazy. Look at his face. What has he got here? A string of lights?
Yeah,
he's lighting it up with his mouth.
Isn't this?
He absorbs energy and then release it because he knows from many testing, of course, he knows where his poles are. You know, where is the positive and the negative.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna see if I can find something. I'm gonna see if I can find something, show you guys something. I'll find something else. Yeah, but this is like seriously, like if you really think about it, you know, in ancient times, they didn't have our language. They had the most simplest form of language, you know, either oral communication or put it in a symbolism somehow, pictographic script. No difference than how we use emojis today. The only difference is everybody's making up their own definition. William said a while back is that if anybody ever hears me on Twitter, when I'm in these spaces and people start using words, I'm trying to understand the most original word and meaning in that word, so that way I can be on the same page as you, because I know that from time to time words have changed and the meanings have changed. It changed for the context that we're in today. But this right here, how would you explain this to somebody if you didn't have pictures? You know, this dude can put his hand in the socket and I get electrocuted. It's the most simplest way you can say it.
Or he's got a lot of fillings or something.
He got something.
You know, he could have.
Isn't this the guy that got busted out?
He figured this out because he said he tried to commit suicide and he grabbed
Oh
it.
my
grabbed the
God.
wire. Yeah, he tried to commit suicide and he was like, "What the fuck? This shit ain't nothing.
That's
Is it
the
on?"
worst way
and then
to
his
figure
buddy
that
probably
shit
came over
out.
and touched that shit and died. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
So no one here watches movies from Costa Rica?
No, thank
No? Okay. Because there's a guy on one of his movies that is an electrician and he's immune to electricity. That's why he became an electrician. So he didn't mind catching big shocks, because for him is so they use that as a gag because he's arrested and they try to electrocute him as a torture for him to tell what he knew, and it doesn't work. Sorry. For those that don't know the contest, it doesn't have any. It's not funny. So I'm sorry.
It's okay.
There's a bunch of stories about like priests that get into like this ecstatic state and then like lift off the ground and fly away. Your talk about this guy that got hit by lightning a bunch of times. I mean, I think it seems pretty obvious that we can control the static electric field coming off of us. And if there is a static electric field or magnetic field that is created by a human body, it sure makes like a lot of things that make sense. Like, why is it that you're attracted to one person, not another? Why can you feel someone in a room whenever you can't see them? I mean, there's all these things that are directly explained by, if we could just manipulate the electric field around our body, all of it's solved.
I was actually going to ask you about that earlier, William, what your thoughts on that was, because it is so true. Like, people have magnetic attraction towards certain people and not others. Not that somebody's a bad person. It's just like maybe you're not like magnetically supposed to be together. I don't know. But it does make me also, like I said earlier, believe more in the terrain theory, that if you're in somebody's, let's just say, their energy field, if they're sick, you'll feel sick. If they're an asshole, maybe you'll pick up on that. It's like if you ever met somebody and you just get the creeps from them and you're like, I don't even know why, they just give me the creeps. But I don't know what your thoughts on the terrain theory are, but it's something that, I mean, I'm not going to obviously go kiss somebody with a fucking cold sore.
Yeah.
Because, fuck germs too, if they're real. But the terrain theory has always interested.
So, I thought about, if you were going to control this electric field your body's producing, how would you do it? Well, how do we experience electricity whenever it's more the electricity within the bathwater and less the electricity blasting you from the light socket? Okay, well, you would experience it as things like a tickle, maybe, right? That would be like electricity dancing a little bit and making you feel a certain way. Well, if the tickle is making you feel a certain way and the tickle is electric, is the feeling too electric? Like, are the emotional states of people actually electrical states of the electrical system inside of your body? And when you wiggle it this way, you're happy, but when you wiggle it this way, you're really sad, right? And in reality, it's just the electricity in your body, making a certain frequency. And so if you're going to control the field that your body's producing, well, you do it just like magnet. You got to change the shape and the source. So maybe if we could take a certain shape, I don't know, like this or whatever, you take the certain shape and then you close your eyes and then you get yourself to feel like super ecstatic for God, or, like really, however what way, but like extremely emotionally charged. That would affect the dance of the electric in your system, and therefore it would affect the power that the electromagnet's putting out, and therefore it would affect your field, right? And then, if that's how it is, maybe these attractive persons who have the magnetic personalities that everybody just loves to be around, maybe what it really is they're just in an emotionally content state that other people would like to be in. And when people come around them, they feel that contentedness, and it makes them feel that way too, because when the bell rings, you ring, and we're all a bell at the end of the day, because I can ring my mouth in a certain way that will get you to act and behave in a certain manner that may or may not do what I want you to do. And that's magic,
Agreed. Yeah, I like how you said that. Mm-hmm.
Well, as a final observation, because I probably will have to go soon, but as a final observation.
Hey, real quick, Ricardo.
Okay, go on. Oh, you can light the bulbs too?
Yeah, you see it? I took a picture of that shit a long time ago, bro.
Did you rub your socks on the carpet or anything?
Nah, you see, I ain't really got no carpets in there. I pulled this out and
did you forget to use dryer sheets?
Nope.
Right.
Just ruling out all of the,
I pulled it out the box and
static.
pulled it out the box, yeah.
I guess we can call you Uncle Faster.
Good one, bro. Good one.
Thank you.
So, William, have you ever heard of this paper that came out that is not widely recognized, where this academic demonstrated that the lungs are not there to absorb oxygen, but to produce electricity by the absorption of oxygen?
Oh man, that's a great theory. I love that idea. And honestly, why would that be any different of an idea than our lungs absorbing oxygen? See, this goes back to the vocabulary thing. Here we are again. So another thing that happens with the theories of everything is everybody has a different word for the same idea, but at the end of the day, it really is exactly the same idea. You know what I mean? And here we are with this new model of the lungs. Well, to me, the new model, if you interpret all this with static electricity, well, I mean, you're just new model, same as the old model, different words. Okay, you want to call the electricity, if you want to call the oxygen and what it does in the lungs creating electricity, I'm fine with that. If you want to call it as they're absorbing oxygen, I'm fine with that. I really don't care. I think you're both right. I mean, I think we're talking about the same exact idea at the end of the day. Like, doesn't matter.
There is a difference between creating oxygen to be placed in the blood cells that then is transported through the body, and the notion that the byproduct of that process is electricity that is generated in the lungs by producing that effect. So what this guy defends is not a changing of the wording, but as the ultimate purpose is not the oxygenation of the blood, but the electrification of the body.
Which would make sense why babies breathe amniotic fluid and they're still able to receive oxygen.
Yeah, and you can also, I'm sorry for the language, you can also put an oxygen tube by your ass and you can survive for 3 or 4 minutes because your intestines can, how do you say it? I'm sorry.
Absorb.
Intestines can absorb oxygen.
Yeah, I ain't never knew that shit. They need a new whole that brings a whole meaning to getting oxygen to your body, bro.
Yeah, that means you could probably smoke a fat blunt from your asshole and get fucked up.
There's a high absorption rate in the rectum, permeability of the membrane itself. It kind of goes back to the whole hindgut fermenters and stuff like that. Animals that basically absorb the last bits of nutrients before it vacates the body. But yeah,
I just wanted to elevate the conversation before we end it. So
absolutely.
Sorry.
You know, I can model it a third way for you that's neither of those other two. Remember what I said about if you're in a static electric field, it won't power anything if you don't move. Well, I mean, what's your lungs doing when you breathe? It's literally pumping you like an accordion. And so if you move in a static electric field, you create electricity. So I'm fine with that model. I think it's great.
Quick shout out to Leaves of Grass in the chat who said, ask Marilyn Monroe. I saw that. Thank you. I know exactly what you're talking about.
That was a great shout out to Julia's mom, Marilyn
I don't know why StreamYard won't let me hook up my account so I can comment in the public comment section. But yes, I do read them. I read all the comments. The chat's actually been on fire tonight. A lot of cool stuff coming through.
It could be your browser.
No, it won't let me. It won't even let me do it either. It won't even let me do it.
I've tried.
Your two are banned. You're two banned. So.
Maybe it's because I say inappropriate shit all the time.
No.
Maybe I'll have to take a look at the settings, but I don't think it's on my end. Sorry about that.
I think it's everybody has different settings. Because on mine, I'm streaming to X right now. And maybe X and StreamYard don't have a collaboration where you can comment.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think if you guys don't mind, I might wrap it up now. That's okay.
There we go. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that was awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you very much.
No, No, definitely have to get you on again in the future, especially as you start doing some more hands-on.
Yeah. When I get the spin lab up and running, I'll come on and tell you guys what I'm up to.
We want to see the explosion live. You see?
Oh, you will.
Yes.
Don't worry. Don't worry. The internet's gonna love this. I'm telling you. It's like spinning stuff with a motorcycle. Tell me it's not just like perfectly made for the internet. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, that's true. Sure. William, want to let everybody know where they can find all your stuff, please?
Yeah, you can check me out at Atlantic Thought on Twitter and also on my YouTube channel at Atlantic Thought.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Everybody, again, we got Lisa, we got Brooke, Julia, Headless Giant, Tyrone, and Ricardo. The links will be in the bottom. Thank you, everybody in the chat. That's what's up. I saw a lot of people from the beginning to the end, and I saw a lot of people on other people's channels commenting. Thank you a lot. That's great. And I think I even saw some new names pop in there. So I appreciate that. Again, William, that was great. I'm so happy you came on. It was better than I expected, and I really look forward to talking to you again, man. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later. Thank you so much, man. That was